Minutes before signing the divorce papers, the wife pulls up in a limousine beside a powerful CEO who just risked everything because he fell in love with her. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The smell of expensive leather filled the air as Eliza Montgomery sat in the back of her lawyer's black sedan. Her trembling fingers clutched a manila folder containing divorce papers that would end her 15-year marriage to Alexander Montgomery, CEO of Montgomery Enterprises and one of the wealthiest men in the country. The irony wasn't lost on her. Arriving to sign divorce papers in a car that cost more than what she'd make in 3 years as a kindergarten teacher. "We're 5 minutes away, Mrs. Montgomery," her lawyer, Diana Wells, said from the seat beside her. "Remember, don't let him intimidate you. The prenuptial agreement has a morality clause and we have evidence of his infidelity. You're entitled to more than the pittance he initially offered." Eliza nodded, barely registering Diana's words. Her mind was replaying fragments of her marriage, the passionate beginning, the gradual distance, the lonely nights as Alexander built his empire, and finally, those damning photographs of him with his young assistant that had arrived anonymously in her email 3 months ago. "He'll try to rush you through this," Diana continued, typing something on her phone. "He always does. According to his assistant, he's squeezed this meeting between a board discussion and a flight to Tokyo. Typical Alexander, treating his marriage's end like just another business transaction to check off his list." Eliza closed her eyes, remembering the man she'd fallen in love with at 22. Ambitious but kind, driven but attentive, that Alexander had disappeared long ago, replaced by a cold, calculating businessman who saw their marriage as just another asset in his portfolio. When had it happened? Had it been gradual, or had he always been this way, and she'd been too blinded by love to see it? The car slowed as they approached the gleaming glass tower that housed Montgomery Enterprises headquarters. A knot formed in Eliza's stomach. The last time she'd been here was for the company Christmas party 8 months ago, where Alexander had barely acknowledged her existence beyond a perfunctory introduction to some investors. "Are you ready?" Diana asked, gathering her briefcase. "As ready as I'll ever be," Eliza replied, smoothing down her simple navy dress. One of the few items she'd bought herself instead of wearing the designer clothes Alexander insisted on purchasing for her. The driver opened their door and the spring air hit Eliza's face. She stepped out, straightening her shoulders. No matter what happened in that conference room, she would maintain her dignity. She'd already cried enough tears over Alexander Montgomery. As they walked toward the entrance, a commotion near the side of the building caught her attention. A sleek, white limousine had pulled up, causing security guards to rush over. Limousines weren't unusual at Montgomery Enterprises. Alexander often sent them for important clients, but something about this one made Eliza pause. The chauffeur emerged, a tall man in an impeccable uniform, and opened the rear door with a flourish. Eliza couldn't see who was inside, but she noticed the security guards suddenly stand at attention, recognition dawning on their faces. "Mrs. Montgomery? We should head in," Diana urged, checking her watch. "We don't want to give Alexander any excuse to claim you were late or uncooperative." "Yes, of course," Eliza said, tearing her eyes away from the scene. Whatever drama was unfolding there had nothing to do with her. After today, none of this would be her concern anymore. The lobby of Montgomery Enterprises was intimidating by design. Soaring ceilings, marble floors, and a massive reception desk manned by perfectly groomed employees. Eliza felt the stares as she walked in. Everyone knew who she was. The soon-to-be ex-Mrs. Montgomery, the woman their boss was discarding. "Mrs. Montgomery," the receptionist greeted her with practiced politeness, though Eliza didn't miss the flash of pity in her eyes. "Mr. Reynolds will escort you to the conference room." A young man in a crisp suit appeared at her side. "This way, please." As they rode the elevator to the 50th floor, Eliza practiced her breathing techniques. In through the nose, out through the mouth. She wouldn't break down. Not here. Not in front of Alexander and his army of lawyers. The elevator doors opened directly into a reception area where Alexander's executive assistant, Caroline, sat behind an ornate desk. The same Caroline from the photographs. She didn't meet Eliza's eyes. "They're waiting for you in conference room A," Caroline said, her voice carefully neutral. "May I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "No, thank you," Diana answered for both of them, her tone professionally frosty. Conference room A was Montgomery Enterprises' largest meeting space, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city. Around the massive table sat 4 men in expensive suits, Alexander's legal team. At the head of the table, looking as if he owned the world, which in many ways he did, sat Alexander Montgomery. At 45, Alexander was even more handsome than when Eliza had first met him at university. His dark hair was now threaded with distinguished silver at the temples, and his face had gained character lines that only enhanced his appeal. He wore power as comfortably as his tailored Tom Ford suit. He didn't stand when Eliza entered. He barely looked up from the document he was reviewing. "You're late," he said simply. Diana checked her watch. "We're exactly on time, Mr. Montgomery. Shall we proceed?" Alexander finally raised his eyes to meet Eliza's, and for a brief moment, she thought she saw something flicker there. Regret? Sadness? But it was gone so quickly she must have imagined it, replaced by his usual cool appraisal. "Let's get this over with," he said, gesturing to the chairs across from him. "I have a flight to catch." Eliza took her seat, placing the folder of divorce papers in front of her. She'd signed most of them already: the distribution of assets, what few were in her name, the waiver of alimony, despite Diana's objections, and various other legal acknowledgments. All that remained was her final signature on the decree itself. "Before we proceed," Diana began, "my client would like to address the matter of the artwork in the Manhattan apartment. The Monet was a gift to her specifically from your mother and therefore should not—" "She can have it," Alexander interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. "And the apartment too, for that matter. I never use it anyway." Diana looked surprised, and Eliza felt a surge of anger. Even in this final meeting, he was treating their marriage like a minor annoyance. The apartment was worth millions, and he was giving it away like it was nothing because he never used it anyway. "That's very generous," Diana said cautiously, "but we'll need that in writing as an addendum to the agreement." "Already taken care of," said the oldest of Alexander's lawyers, sliding a document across the table. "Mr. Montgomery had us prepare this yesterday. The deed transfer for the apartment and the provenance documents for the artwork will be delivered to Ms. Warren's new address next week." Eliza flinched at hearing her maiden name. She hadn't been Eliza Warren in 15 years. Soon that's who she would be again. Just Eliza Warren, kindergarten teacher, no longer the wife of a business magnate. As Diana reviewed the addendum, Alexander's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowning, then silenced it. A moment later, it buzzed again, and again, and again. "Excuse me," he said, an edge of irritation in his voice as he checked the screen. Whatever he saw there made him sit up straighter. "I need to step out for a moment." "Mr. Montgomery, we've barely begun," Diana protested. "My client has taken time out of her day to be here and—" "It's an emergency." Alexander cut her off, already standing. 5 minutes, that's all." Without waiting for a response, he strode out of the conference room, phone to his ear, leaving an awkward silence in his wake. "This is so typical," Eliza murmured, shaking her head. "Even at the end, I'm not a priority." One of Alexander's lawyers cleared his throat uncomfortably. "I'm sure Mr. Montgomery will return shortly. The Tokyo deal is at a critical stage." Outside the conference room, they could hear Alexander's voice rising, though the words were indistinct through the heavy door. Whatever emergency had called him away, it was clearly making him agitated. Eliza tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the documents in front of her. Soon, this would all be behind her. She could return to her small apartment, to the life she'd begun building for herself since she'd moved out 3 months ago. It wasn't glamorous, but it was hers. The minutes ticked by on the elegant wall clock. 5 minutes became 10. Alexander's lawyers exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable. "This is unacceptable," Diana finally said, closing her folder with a snap. "If Mr. Montgomery can't be bothered to attend his own divorce proceedings, perhaps we should reschedule for when he can give this matter his full attention." "That won't be necessary," Alexander said, suddenly reappearing in the doorway. But something about him had changed. His perfectly composed facade had slipped, revealing something Eliza hadn't seen in years: genuine emotion. His hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, a nervous habit from his younger days that his corporate image had long since buried. His tie was loosened, and there was a wild look in his eyes that made Eliza sit up straighter. "Eliza," he said, his voice different somehow, "there's something I need to tell you. Not here." He glanced at the room full of lawyers. "Privately." Diana immediately went on alert. "Anything you need to say to my client can be said in my presence, Mr. Montgomery?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "This isn't about the divorce, Diana. It's personal." "That's no longer your privilege," Diana replied coolly. Eliza, however, was intrigued by this break in Alexander's usually impenetrable composure. "It's all right, Diana. 5 minutes." "Eliza, I strongly advise against—" "5 minutes," Eliza repeated firmly. Alexander held the door open and Eliza followed him out into the hallway, conscious of the curious stares from both legal teams. He led her to his private office next door, closing the door behind them. Alexander's office was exactly as she remembered it: minimalist, powerful, with a wall of windows overlooking the city he'd conquered. How many nights had he spent here instead of coming home to her? "What's this about, Alexander?" she asked, maintaining her distance. "I came here to sign papers, not to—" "I've made a terrible mistake," he interrupted, his voice low and urgent. "Several, actually, but I'm talking about Adamson Technologies." Eliza frowned, confused. Adamson Technologies was Montgomery Enterprises' biggest rival. "What about it?" "I've spent the last 3 months orchestrating a hostile takeover. It was supposed to be the crown jewel of my career, absorbing our largest competitor, doubling our market cap overnight, cementing my legacy." He was pacing now, something she'd never seen him do in this office. "The board was against it. Too risky, they said. But I was sure, so damn sure. Alexander, I don't understand what this has to do with—" "I just got word that the deal fell through. Not just fell through, imploded spectacularly. Adamson found out about our play and countered by selling to Takara Corp instead. Our stock is going to plummet when the markets open tomorrow. I've lost billions, not just the company's money, but my own personal investment." Eliza stared at him, still not understanding why he was telling her this now, of all times. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I still don't see—" "I risked everything on this deal, Eliza. Everything. And now—" He finally stopped pacing and looked at her directly. "Now I realize I wasn't just risking my money. I risked us. I've been risking us for years, and I didn't even see it until it was too late." A chill ran through Eliza's body. Was this some kind of manipulation? A way to get her to reconsider the divorce now that his financial situation had changed? But the prenup protected him, not her. If anything, he had more reason to finalize the divorce before his financial losses became public knowledge. "What exactly are you saying, Alexander?" she asked carefully. He stepped closer, and she could see the raw emotion in his eyes. "I'm saying that losing this deal made me realize what I've been losing all along. You. Us. Everything that actually matters." Eliza took a step back, maintaining the distance between them. She'd seen this side of Alexander before: passionate, intense, seemingly genuine, but usually only when he was closing a deal or charming potential investors. Never in their personal life, at least not for many years. She struggled to find the right words. This is awfully convenient timing, Alexander. His face fell. You think I'm making this up? That I'd lie about losing billions? No. I think you're having a crisis because something didn't go your way for once, and suddenly you're looking at what else you might lose. She crossed her arms, hating how easily she could read him after all these years. What happens when the next deal comes along, when the next challenge presents itself? You'll disappear back into your work, and I'll be right back where I started, alone in a marriage with a man who's married to his company. Alexander ran a hand through his hair again, further disheveling his usually perfect appearance. You're right, he admitted, surprising her. That's exactly what would happen if I hadn't already lost everything. What are you talking about? You haven't lost everything. Montgomery Enterprises is worth billions. One failed deal. The company isn't mine anymore, he interrupted, his voice so quiet she almost didn't hear him. Eliza stared at him, certain she'd misunderstood. Excuse me? The board voted me out this morning, effective immediately. His laugh was bitter. Unanimous decision. Apparently risking 30 years of stable growth on what they called my midlife crisis power play was the last straw. Eliza felt the floor shift beneath her. Alexander without Montgomery Enterprises was unimaginable. The company had been his life, his identity, the mistress she could never compete with. But you're the majority shareholder, she said, her legal knowledge from years of being a corporate wife kicking in. They can't just, I'm not anymore. He sank into his leather chair, suddenly looking 10 years older. I leveraged most of my personal shares as collateral for loans to fund the Adamson takeover. When the deal collapsed, the banks called in their markers. By this time tomorrow, my ownership stake will be below 15%. Not enough to override the board. For the first time, Eliza noticed the cardboard box on his desk. It was surreal. Alexander Montgomery, packing up his office like any ordinary fired employee. So that's why you're suddenly interested in salvaging our marriage? She couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. You've lost your company, so now you're scrambling to keep what's left? I'm your backup plan? Alexander looked up at her, genuine hurt flashing across his face. Is that what you think of me? What am I supposed to think? For years, I begged you to spend more time at home, to come to my school functions, to take a vacation, just the two of us. I watched you miss anniversaries, birthdays, even my father's funeral because some business emergency always took precedence. Her voice rose as years of suppressed frustration bubbled to the surface. And now, minutes before we're supposed to sign our divorce papers, after I've finally found the strength to walk away, you have some miraculous epiphany about what really matters, because you lost your precious company? Alexander flinched at each accusation but didn't argue. When she finished, he simply asked, Are you done? The coldness in his tone reignited her anger. Am I done? Yes, Alexander, I've been done for a long time. I just didn't have the courage to admit it until those photos arrived in my inbox. At the mention of the photos, Alexander's expression changed. What photos? Don't play dumb. The photos of you and Caroline, your late nights at the office. His confusion seemed genuine. Eliza, there's nothing between me and Caroline. I saw the pictures, Alexander. You were embracing her, in this very office. When? When was this supposed to have happened? Eliza crossed her arms. February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day, which, if you recall, you spent in Dubai closing the Al Nahyan deal. Understanding dawned on his face. The day my mother died. The simple statement stopped Eliza cold. Barbara Montgomery had indeed passed away in February, after a long battle with cancer. Alexander had been devastated, though in typical Montgomery fashion, he'd channeled his grief into work rather than allowing himself to mourn properly. Caroline was consoling me, he continued quietly. I'd just gotten the call from the hospice. She brought me a glass of water and awkwardly tried to comfort me when I broke down. That's all." Eliza felt the ground shift again. Could it be true? The photos hadn't shown their faces clearly, just Alexander embracing a woman with Caroline's distinctive red hair in what had appeared to be an intimate moment. "Why didn't you come home to me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did you fly to Dubai the very next day as if nothing had happened?" "Because I couldn't face it. I couldn't face any of it. My mother's death, what our marriage had become, the emptiness of the life I'd built." He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the city skyline. Work was the only thing that made sense, the only place where I felt in control. The silence stretched between them, filled with 15 years of miscommunications, assumptions, and growing distance. "Who sent you those photos?" Alexander finally asked. "They were anonymous. I assumed it was someone from the company trying to warn me." Alexander turned back to face her, a new intensity in his eyes. "Or someone trying to drive us apart at a strategic moment. Someone who knew I'd be too proud and stubborn to explain, and you'd be too hurt to ask questions." Eliza frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "The timing, Eliza. 3 months ago, exactly when I began making moves on Adamson, exactly when rumors of the takeover started circulating in the industry." He stepped closer, his business mind clearly working through the problem. "Whoever sent those photos wanted our marriage to end. They wanted me distracted, emotionally compromised." "That's paranoid, even for you," Eliza said, but a seed of doubt had been planted. The photos had arrived at a particularly vulnerable time in their marriage, when Alexander had been more absent than ever due to the Adamson deal preparations. "Is it? The Adamson takeover would have made me untouchable in this industry. There are plenty of people who would benefit from seeing me fail, personally and professionally." A knock at the door interrupted them. Diana poked her head in, her expression a mixture of concern and irritation. "Eliza, it's been 15 minutes. Is everything all right?" Before Eliza could respond, the office door swung fully open to reveal Caroline standing there, looking flustered. "Mr. Montgomery, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation in the lobby that requires your attention." Alexander's jaw tightened. "I'm in the middle of something important, Caroline." "I understand, sir, but it's Mr. Adamson. He's here, with his daughter." Alexander froze. "Walter Adamson is in our lobby? Now?" "Yes, sir. He's demanding to see you immediately. Security tried to explain that you're unavailable, but he's causing quite a scene. He keeps saying something about—" Caroline glanced uncomfortably at Eliza. "About your underhanded tactics regarding his daughter." Eliza looked between Caroline and Alexander, noting the way her husband's face had paled. "What is she talking about, Alexander? What does Walter Adamson's daughter have to do with anything?" Alexander seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Another unprecedented occurrence. In all their years together, Eliza had never seen him speechless. "It's complicated," he finally said. "Uncomplicated," Eliza demanded. Alexander sighed heavily. "Sophia Adamson works for one of our subsidiaries in the marketing department. She doesn't use her family name professionally. She goes by her mother's maiden name, Collins. No one knew who she was until after she was hired. When I found out, I—" "You what?" Eliza pressed, a sinking feeling in her stomach. "I asked her to dinner, to discuss her career prospects." The implication hung in the air. Eliza felt sick. "You tried to pump her for information about her father's company." "Initially, yes," Alexander admitted. "But something unexpected happened. Let me guess. You fell for her," Eliza said flatly, the pieces clicking into place. "Not Caroline. Sophia Adamson." That's who Alexander had been seeing. That explained his increased absences, the late nights, the distraction. "No," Alexander said firmly. "I discovered that Walter Adamson has been using her. He placed her in our company as a corporate spy. She's been feeding him information about Montgomery Enterprises for over a year. Caroline nodded vigorously. It's true, Mrs. Montgomery. We have proof. Emails, recorded conversations. Mr. Montgomery was building a case to expose them both. Eliza felt like she'd stepped into an episode of a television drama. So, you weren't having an affair with her? Alexander looked genuinely offended. Of course not. I was trying to gather counterintelligence. Sophia Adamson believed she was manipulating me, when in fact I was setting a trap for her father. Which apparently backfired spectacularly, Eliza noted, gesturing to the cardboard box on his desk. Alexander's expression darkened. Adamson must have found out what I was doing. That's why he sold to Takara instead, to destroy my takeover plan and ruin me in the process. And now he's here, Caroline added nervously, with his daughter. Why? Eliza asked. Alexander ran a hand through his hair again. I can think of several possibilities, none of them good. Diana, who had been listening to this exchange with growing confusion, finally interjected. I don't mean to be insensitive to your corporate espionage drama, but we're here for a divorce proceeding. Your business problems, while unfortunate, don't change the fact that… Actually, Alexander interrupted, they change everything. He turned to Eliza, his eyes intense. I need your help, Eliza. Eliza blinked in surprise. My help? With what? With Walter Adamson. He's seen me at my highest, but he's never seen me vulnerable. If he knows our marriage is ending today, on the same day his takeover countermove succeeded, it will confirm for him that I'm finished, destroyed. That's what he wants. Total victory. So, what are you asking me to do? Eliza asked, though she had a sinking feeling she already knew. Postpone the divorce, just for a little while. Come downstairs with me now and help me save face. Let Adamson see that while he may have won the business battle, he hasn't broken me personally. Diana immediately stepped forward. Absolutely not. Eliza is not a prop for your business theatrics, Alexander. But Eliza was studying her almost ex-husband's face. For once, she saw something genuine there. Desperation, yes, but also a flicker of the man she'd fallen in love with. The man who, for all his faults, never backed down from a challenge. If I do this, she said slowly, what's in it for me? Alexander seemed surprised by the question. What do you want? It was a powerful moment. Alexander Montgomery, who always held all the cards, asking what she wanted. Eliza felt a strange sense of calm wash over her. After 15 years of being a supporting character in his life story, she was finally in a position to set her own terms. The truth, she said simply. About everything. No more corporate doublespeak, no more strategic omissions. If I'm going to help you face Walter Adamson, I need to know exactly what I'm walking into. Alexander held her gaze for a long moment before nodding. You'll have it, all of it. And one more thing, Eliza added, feeling a surge of confidence. After this is over, whatever this is, the decision about our marriage is mine. Not yours, not Diana's, not anyone else's. Mine. Alexander swallowed hard but nodded again. Agreed. Diana looked horrified. Eliza, you can't be serious. This is exactly the kind of manipulation. It's my decision, Diana, Eliza said firmly, surprised by her own resolve. I'll see this through. As if on cue, Caroline's phone buzzed. She checked it and looked up with wide eyes. Security says Mr. Adamson is on his way up. He's bypassed the front desk somehow and is heading for the executive floor. Alexander extended his hand to Eliza. Are you with me? Eliza looked at his outstretched hand, the same hand she'd taken at the altar 15 years ago, full of hope and dreams for their future together. The same hand that had gradually slipped away from hers as ambition and success consumed him. What was she doing? Was she really going to let herself be pulled back into his world of corporate intrigue and power plays? This morning she'd been ready, eager even, to sign those divorce papers and walk away for good. And yet… She took his hand. The elevator chimed, signaling an arrival on the executive floor. Alexander's grip on Eliza's hand tightened almost imperceptibly. In that subtle pressure, she felt his vulnerability, something she hadn't witnessed in years. "Caroline," Alexander said, his voice instantly transformed back into the commanding CEO tone Eliza knew so well. "Tell security to escort our legal teams to the secondary conference room on 48. The divorce proceedings are postponed." Diana looked ready to protest, but Eliza gave her a subtle headshake. Her lawyer reluctantly gathered her materials, lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. "What's our strategy here?" Eliza whispered as Caroline hurried off to relay Alexander's instructions. "Follow my lead," Alexander murmured. "Walter Adamson is brilliant but arrogant. He believes he's already won, which makes him dangerous but predictable." Before Eliza could ask for more specifics, the elevator doors opened, and Walter Adamson strode onto the floor like he already owned it. He was a large man, well over 6 feet tall, with a physique that suggested he had been an athlete in his younger days. Now in his 60s, his imposing frame had softened somewhat, but he still moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to commanding rooms. Behind him walked a young woman who could only be Sophia Adamson, tall and elegant with striking features that somehow managed to convey both fragility and determination simultaneously. She looked to be in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Unlike her father's triumphant expression, hers was a mixture of defiance and discomfort. "Montgomery!" Walter boomed, his voice filling the reception area. "I thought I'd save you the trouble of reading about your downfall in tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. Figured I'd deliver the news personally." Alexander stepped forward, still holding Eliza's hand. His posture was relaxed, his smile easy, the perfect picture of a man without a care in the world. If Eliza hadn't just witnessed his moment of desperation in his office, she would have believed the performance completely. "Walter, this is an unexpected pleasure," Alexander said smoothly. "I see you've brought Sophia. I trust you're both well?" Walter's jovial expression faltered slightly at Alexander's calm demeanor. He'd clearly expected to find a man in the midst of a professional and personal collapse. "Cut the pleasantries, Montgomery. You know why I'm here." "Actually, I don't," Alexander replied with a casual shrug. "But I'm afraid whatever it is will have to wait. My wife and I were just heading out to lunch." Walter's gaze shifted to Eliza, as if noticing her for the first time. His eyes narrowed as they traveled to their joined hands. "Mrs. Montgomery," he acknowledged with a nod, "I'm surprised to see you here. Word around town was that you were filing for divorce today." He smiled thinly. "Another rumor I was misinformed about, it seems." So he did know about the divorce proceedings. Eliza felt Alexander's hand twitch in hers. She squeezed it reassuringly before stepping forward, summoning every ounce of the social grace she'd developed as the wife of a powerful CEO. "Mr. Adamson, how lovely to finally meet you," she said warmly. "Alexander has spoken of you often." Walter's eyes darted between them suspiciously. "Has he now? All good things, I'm sure." "He's always said you're the most formidable mind in the business," Eliza continued smoothly. "I can see why. It takes a special kind of person to treat corporate competition as a deeply personal vendetta." Walter's face reddened slightly. Behind him, Sophia shifted uncomfortably. Alexander stepped in smoothly. "My wife has always been direct, Walter. It's one of her many qualities I admire." He glanced at his watch. "Now, if you'll excuse us, we have reservations at—" "You think you're so clever, don't you?" Walter interrupted, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "Seducing my daughter, trying to manipulate her for information." Sophia flinched visibly. "Dad, please." "It's all right, Sophia." Walter patted her arm without looking at her. "Everyone now knows exactly what kind of man Alexander Montgomery really is." Eliza felt her stomach twist. What exactly had gone on between Alexander and this woman? Despite his denial of an affair, Something had clearly happened to provoke this level of rage from Walter Adamson. "You've got it backward, Walter," Alexander replied, his voice still remarkably calm. "Your daughter approached one of my executives for a job, using her mother's maiden name to hide her identity. For months, she's been feeding you internal information about Montgomery Enterprises, information you've been using to systematically undermine my company." Walter's expression didn't change, but a vein in his temple began to pulse visibly. "Prove it." "I already have. The board has all the evidence." Alexander's smile turned sharp. "Why do you think I was making a move on Adamson Technologies in the first place? It wasn't just a business decision. It was justice." Eliza watched this exchange with growing unease. The tension between the two men was palpable, charged with years of rivalry and recent betrayal. She glanced at Sophia, who was staring at the floor, her cheeks flushed with what might have been shame or anger. "Yet here you stand, Montgomery, without your company," Walter said, regaining his smugness. "The board kicked you out this morning. I have friends there too, you know. Your grand revenge plot failed spectacularly, and now Takara owns what you couldn't have." "I may have lost this battle," Alexander conceded, "but I'm far from defeated. The difference between us, Walter, is that I know what truly matters." He brought Eliza's hand to his lips and kissed it gently, a gesture so unexpected that Eliza had to suppress a gasp. "Business comes and goes, but this is what lasts," Walter scoffed. "Spare me the sentimentality. Everyone knows your marriage has been a sham for years. My sources told me divorce papers were being signed today." "Perhaps your sources are as unreliable as your daughter's loyalty," Alexander suggested mildly. Sophia's head snapped up at that, her eyes flashing with sudden anger. "You bastard!" she hissed. "After everything—" "Sophia," Walter warned, putting a restraining hand on her arm. "Not here." The interaction confirmed Eliza's suspicions. Something had indeed happened between Alexander and Sophia Adamson, something beyond corporate espionage. "If you'll excuse us," Alexander said, smoothly guiding Eliza toward the elevator. "As I mentioned, we have lunch reservations. A celebration, actually." "Celebration?" Walter echoed skeptically. "Yes," Alexander replied, pressing the elevator call button. 15 years of marriage today. We renew our vows next month." Eliza managed to keep her expression neutral, but inside she was reeling. The audacity of the lie was breathtaking, especially considering they'd been minutes away from signing divorce papers. Their anniversary wasn't for another 4 months. "How convenient," Walter sneered. "Well, enjoy your lunch. I'll be busy integrating what's left of Montgomery Enterprises into the Adamson-Takara portfolio." The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Alexander ushered Eliza inside, his hand possessively at the small of her back. "Oh, and Walter," Alexander called as the doors began to close, "you might want to check your deal with Takara more carefully, specifically Section 17, subsection B regarding intellectual property rights. I think you'll find it illuminating." The last thing Eliza saw before the doors closed was Walter Adamson's confident smile faltering. As soon as they were alone in the elevator, Alexander released her hand and sagged against the wall, the perfect CEO facade crumbling. "What the hell was that about?" Eliza demanded. "Renewing our vows? Our anniversary isn't until September. And what exactly happened between you and Sophia Adamson?" Alexander ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking exhausted. "I needed to buy time. Walter expected to find me broken, professionally and personally. Seeing us together, apparently happy and solid, will make him second-guess his victory. He'll start looking for traps, hidden angles." "Are there any?" Eliza asked. "Traps, I mean." A ghost of a smile crossed Alexander's face. "Maybe. That reference to Section 17 was a bluff, but he doesn't know that. He'll spend the next 24 hours combing through that contract, looking for what he might have missed." The elevator continued its descent, and Eliza felt a familiar mixture of admiration and frustration. Even now, backed into a corner, Alexander was playing chess when everyone else was playing checkers. "You didn't answer my other question," she pointed out, "about Sophia Adamson." The elevator slowed as it approached the lobby level. Alexander straightened his tie and squared his shoulders, preparing to resume his role. "We'll talk about that," he promised. "But not here, not now. Remember, we have an audience waiting." As if on cue, the doors opened to reveal the bustling lobby, where curious employees and security guards were still gathered, no doubt discussing Walter Adamson's dramatic entrance. Alexander took her hand again, his public smile back in place. "Ready, darling?" Eliza hesitated for just a moment. This charade was rapidly spinning out of control. What had started as a simple face-saving exercise in front of Walter Adamson was now being performed for an audience of Montgomery Enterprises employees. By tomorrow, news of their apparent reconciliation would be all over the business world. But she had agreed to help, and despite everything, she wanted answers. Alexander had promised her the truth, and she intended to collect. "Where are we really going?" she asked quietly as they walked through the lobby, smiling and nodding at the employees they passed. "My car is waiting out back," he murmured. "We need to get somewhere private." They emerged from the building's side exit where Alexander's midnight blue Bentley was idling, his longtime driver, Jenkins, at the wheel. The familiar luxury of the vehicle, the buttery, soft leather seats, the perfect temperature, the subtle scent of Alexander's preferred sandalwood air freshener, enveloped Eliza as she slid in. As Jenkins pulled away from the curb, Alexander's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening. "What now?" Eliza asked, dreading the answer. "Walter is calling an emergency press conference for 3 p.m. to announce the Takara deal," Alexander said grimly. "He's moving faster than I anticipated. We have less than 3 hours to come up with a counter-strategy." "We?" Eliza repeated, arching an eyebrow. "Alexander, I agreed to help you save face in front of Walter Adamson. I didn't sign up to be part of whatever corporate revenge plot you're hatching." "I know," Alexander said quietly. "And I'll understand if you want out. Jenkins can take you home and I'll handle this on my own." He looked out the window, his profile sharp against the city skyline. "I've handled everything on my own for a long time. It's a hard habit to break." The simple admission caught Eliza off guard. Alexander had always been so self-sufficient, so confident in his abilities, that he rarely acknowledged needing anyone. That he was doing so now, when he had truly lost everything that defined him in the business world, seemed significant. "Before I decide anything," she said carefully, "I need the truth you promised me, starting with Sophia Adamson." Alexander nodded, his expression grim. "Fair enough. Jenkins, take us to the house on the river, please." The river house was their smallest property, a modest, by Montgomery standards, 3-bedroom home on the outskirts of the city, where the river curved between ancient willows. They had bought it early in their marriage as a weekend retreat, a place to escape the pressures of Alexander's growing business empire. In those early years, they had spent nearly every weekend there, swimming in the river during summer, building fires in the stone hearth during winter, making love on the wraparound porch under the stars. It had been their sanctuary, their private Eden, until Alexander's work had gradually consumed their weekends and then their holidays, and finally, even their rare vacations. The river house had sat empty for years now, maintained by staff but unlived in, a physical manifestation of what their marriage had become. Eliza hadn't set foot in the river house for at least 3 years. The fact that Alexander was taking her there now, of all places, felt symbolic in ways she wasn't ready to analyze. As the Bentley left the city behind, Eliza gazed out at the passing scenery, wondering how her day had veered so dramatically off course. This morning, she had been prepared to end her marriage and begin a new chapter. Now she was sitting beside her almost ex-husband, heading to the place where they had once been happiest, about to hear secrets that might change everything, or nothing at all. The river house stood just as Eliza remembered it, a craftsman-style retreat nestled among ancient willows, its weathered cedar siding and blue shutters giving it a timeless quality. As Jenkins pulled up the gravel driveway, Eliza was struck by a wave of nostalgia so powerful it momentarily stole her breath. This was where they had been happiest, before Montgomery Enterprises expanded internationally, before the late-night calls and missed anniversaries, before Alexander became more legend than man. "Thank you, Jenkins," Alexander said as the driver opened their door. "That will be all for now." Jenkins nodded, his weathered face betraying no surprise at their unexpected visit to the long-neglected property. "Will you be requiring dinner arrangements, sir?" Alexander glanced at Eliza questioningly. She found herself nodding almost imperceptibly. "Yes," Alexander confirmed, "for two. Nothing elaborate. You remember what we used to enjoy here." "Very good, sir. I'll see to it." As Jenkins drove away, Eliza and Alexander stood side by side in the driveway, the gentle sound of the river flowing behind the house the only noise between them. Alexander removed a key from his wallet, an actual physical key, not the electronic fobs used at their other residences, and led the way to the front door. The interior was dim, the furniture draped with white sheets like ghosts of their former life together. Alexander moved through the space with familiarity, pulling back drapes to let in the afternoon light, removing covers from sofas and chairs. Eliza stood in the entryway, overwhelmed by memories. There was the Riverstone fireplace where they had spent countless winter evenings, the kitchen where Alexander had attempted to cook her birthday dinner their second year of marriage, setting off every smoke alarm in the process, the staircase where they had once— "Would you like something to drink?" Alexander asked, interrupting her thoughts. He had moved to the small bar in the corner, which she noticed was still fully stocked. "I believe there's still some of that Bordeaux you like." "Water is fine," Eliza replied, her voice slightly hoarse. She cleared her throat. "I didn't realize you still came here." Alexander poured 2 glasses of water from a carafe that had apparently been recently refilled. The caretaker must have been notified of their arrival. "I don't," he admitted, handing her a glass. "Not really. I've stopped by a few times over the years, usually when passing through for business, to check on the property." "But not to remember us," Eliza thought but didn't say. Instead, she took a seat on the now uncovered sofa, placed her water on the coffee table, and fixed Alexander with a steady gaze. "You promised me the truth," she reminded him. "About everything." Alexander nodded, sitting not beside her but in an armchair adjacent, close enough for intimacy but respecting the boundaries between them. "I did. Where would you like me to start?" "Sophia Adamson," Eliza said without hesitation. "What really happened between you two?" Alexander took a deep breath. "It started about 6 months ago. HR flagged an unusual employee transfer request. A junior marketing associate from our Seattle office asking to move to headquarters. Normally that wouldn't cross my desk, but there was a note from Seattle management praising her exceptional work." He took a sip of water before continuing. "I didn't think much of it at the time. Sophia Collins. She was using her mother's maiden name, joined the New York office, and within weeks she was making waves. Innovative campaign ideas, insightful market analyses. Her direct supervisors were impressed." "And you noticed her," Eliza said, trying to keep the accusation out of her voice. "Not romantically," Alexander clarified quickly. "Professionally. I make it a point to keep an eye on rising talent. About 3 months into her time here, she was assigned to a team working on a confidential product launch, something that would have put us years ahead of Adamson Technologies in the Asian market." Alexander's expression hardened. 2 weeks later, Adamson announced an almost identical product. The timing was too perfect to be coincidence. I ordered an internal investigation, and that's when we discovered Sophia Collins was actually Sophia Adamson. "Walter's daughter," Eliza murmured. "Sent to spy," Exactly. She had accessed files she had no business seeing, attended meetings she shouldn't have been invited to. Once we knew what to look for, the evidence was overwhelming. "So you confronted her?" Eliza asked. Alexander's gaze shifted away momentarily. "Not immediately. I decided to play the long game. If Walter wanted to use his daughter to gather intelligence, I would use her to feed him misinformation." Eliza felt a chill run down her spine. The coldness of the strategy, using a young woman as a pawn in a corporate chess match, reminded her of why she had grown increasingly distant from Alexander's world. "Did you seduce her?" she asked bluntly. "Is that what Walter was alluding to?" "No," Alexander answered firmly, meeting her eyes again. "I never touched her, but—" He hesitated. "I did lead her to believe I was interested, professionally at first, mentorship, career guidance. Then I allowed her to think the interest was becoming personal." "You manipulated her emotions," Eliza translated. "I let her believe she was manipulating mine," Alexander corrected. "Sophia is not an innocent victim, Eliza. She came into our company under false pretenses with the explicit purpose of corporate espionage. She was willing to flirt, to hint at the possibility of more, to get information from me. So you beat her at her own game," Eliza said, conflicted emotions swirling within her. Relief that Alexander hadn't physically cheated, disgust at the manipulation on both sides, and a growing unease about what came next in the story. "Yes, I began feeding her carefully crafted information, plans we had no intention of implementing, strategies designed to lead Adamson Technologies astray. For a while, it worked brilliantly. Walter made several significant missteps based on the false intelligence Sophia was providing him." Alexander leaned forward, his expression intense. "But then something unexpected happened. Sophia started to genuinely open up to me about her complicated relationship with her father, her reluctance to be part of his vendetta against me, her own ambitions beyond the family business." "You started to care about her," Eliza realized. Alexander looked away, not romantically, but yes, I began to see her as a person, not just a pawn. I thought perhaps I could convince her to switch sides, to work with me against her father. "Did you?" "I tried. About a month ago, I revealed that I knew who she really was. She was shocked, then defensive, then resigned. She admitted everything, said her father had pressured her into it, that she'd never wanted to be part of his schemes. She cried, Eliza, real tears." "And you believed her?" Alexander's laugh was bitter. "I wanted to. It would have been the perfect coup, turning Walter's daughter against him. We had several more conversations, each more personal than the last. She shared childhood memories, family secrets. I started to think she was genuinely considering helping me take down her father's company. But it was another manipulation, Eliza guessed. The ultimate one, Alexander confirmed. While I thought I was turning Walter's spy, she was feeding him even more valuable information, my true plans for the Adamson takeover. All those intimate conversations, those vulnerable moments. She was gathering intelligence at a much deeper level. Alexander stood abruptly, moving to the window to look out at the river. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. Walter had already begun counter-moves based on his knowledge of my strategy. And he had something else, too. "What?" Alexander turned back to face her, his expression pained. "Recordings, Eliza. Sophia recorded our conversations, selectively edited to make it sound like I was seducing her, promising her things, both professionally and personally." Eliza felt a twist in her gut. "Those recordings, did they include discussions about us? About our marriage?" Alexander's silence was answer enough. "What did you tell her?" Eliza asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "The truth," he said quietly. "That we had grown apart, that I had prioritized the company over our relationship for years, that I wasn't sure if there was anything left to save." The words hit Eliza like physical blows. Not because they were untrue. She had felt the same way for a long time, but because Alexander had shared these intimate truths with a stranger before ever discussing them with her. Walter used those recordings to convince key members of my board that I had become a liability, Alexander continued, untrustworthy, distracted by personal drama, willing to engage in questionable relationships for corporate gain. They believed it because there was just enough truth in it, Eliza concluded. Yes, Walter's masterstroke wasn't the Takara deal. It was destroying my credibility from within. Once he had the board convinced I was unstable, the rest was easy. Eliza took a long drink of water, processing everything. What about the photos sent to me? The ones of you with Caroline? Almost certainly orchestrated by Walter or Sophia, Alexander said. They needed you to file for divorce at the exact moment I was most vulnerable professionally. The ultimate coup, losing my company and my marriage in the same week. Eliza stood, needing to move, to think. She walked to the large windows overlooking the river, watching the afternoon sunlight play across the water's surface. "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" she asked finally. "Why keep me in the dark about the Adamson situation, about Sophia, about all of it?" Alexander joined her at the window, keeping a respectful distance. "For the same reason I've kept you separate from my business dealings all these years. I thought I was protecting you." "From what?" "From the ugliness, the cutthroat tactics, the betrayals, the constant vigilance required to maintain power." He sighed heavily. "But I see now that in trying to shield you from my world, I shut you out of my life." Eliza turned to study his face, searching for signs of the calculated charm he used in business. Instead, she found only weariness and genuine regret. "There's more, isn't there?" she asked. "This isn't just about losing the company or your pride. Walter Adamson selling to Takara. Why does it matter so much?" Alexander's expression became grave. "Takara is just a front, Eliza. The real buyer is Zhao Enterprises." Eliza's eyes widened in recognition. "The Chinese conglomerate? The one with ties to their military?" "Yes. If this deal goes through, sensitive American technology will be in the hands of a foreign power with questionable intentions. I've been fighting to prevent this for years. It's why I've been so obsessed with neutralizing Walter. He doesn't care who he sells to as long as the price is right." "Does the board know this?" "Some suspect, but Walter has convinced them I'm being paranoid, that my accusations are just sour grapes over losing to a competitor." Alexander ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "Without concrete proof of Zhao's involvement, I can't stop the deal. And now that I've been removed as CEO, I have even less leverage." Eliza absorbed this new information, her mind racing. The stakes were suddenly much higher than a personal vendetta between two powerful men, or even the fate of a single company. This was potentially a matter of national security. "What's your next move?" she asked. Alexander looked at her with surprise. "You're still willing to help me after everything I've told you?" "I haven't decided yet," Eliza answered honestly, "but I need to know what I'd be getting into if I did." A small smile lifted the corner of Alexander's mouth, not his CEO smile, but the one she remembered from their early days, when he was still building his dream and she was his trusted confidant. "I have one card left to play," he said, "a piece of information that could prove the Zhao connection and stop the deal. But I can't access it anymore, not without my company credentials." "So you need someone who still has access," Eliza concluded. "Someone inside Montgomery Enterprises who's still loyal to you." "Not just someone," Alexander said, his eyes locking with hers. "I need Caroline." "Caroline?" Eliza repeated, taken aback. "Your assistant?" "Former assistant," Alexander corrected. "And yes, she's the only one who can help us now." Eliza paced the length of the living room, processing this latest twist. "The same Caroline who I thought you were having an affair with?" The one who was consoling you when your mother died?" "The very same," Alexander confirmed. "Caroline has been with me for 8 years. She knows every aspect of my business and has access to files even the board can't see." "And you trust her?" Eliza asked. "After everything that's happened, you're certain she won't betray you like Sophia did?" Alexander moved to the fireplace, running his fingers along the mantel where framed photos of their happier days once stood. "Caroline's loyalty isn't to Montgomery Enterprises, it's to me. Always has been." Something in his tone made Eliza pause. "What aren't you telling me about her?" Alexander turned, leaning against the mantel. "Caroline's father worked for my father for 30 years. When he died suddenly of a heart attack, my father did nothing for the family. No continued health insurance, no pension, nothing. They lost everything, their home, their savings trying to pay medical bills." "I didn't know that," Eliza said quietly. "Caroline was 17. She dropped out of school to support her mother and younger siblings, worked 3 jobs until her mother's health collapsed under the stress. By the time I met her, she was 24, with no degree, no prospects, and a mountain of debt from her mother's funeral." "So you hired her," Eliza concluded, "out of guilt for what your father did." "At first, yes," Alexander admitted. "She started as a file clerk. But she was brilliant, determined. She worked harder than anyone I'd ever seen. Within a year, she had earned an executive assistant position. 2 years after that, she was my right hand. And somewhere along the way, her gratitude to you became loyalty," Eliza surmised. "More than loyalty," Alexander said. "Understanding. Caroline understands what drives me because she's driven by the same thing, never wanting to be powerless again, never wanting those she cares about to suffer while the powerful look away." Eliza considered this. She had always seen Caroline as just another fixture in Alexander's corporate world, another barrier between herself and her husband, never as a person with her own history, her own wounds. "What exactly do you need from her?" Eliza asked finally. Alexander straightened. "In my private server, there's a folder of communications between Walter Adamson and Zhao Enterprises. Emails, contracts, financial transfers. Proof that Zhao is the real buyer and that Walter knows exactly who he's selling to. I need Caroline to access that folder and send it to the right people before the deal is finalized." "The right people being?" "The board, the SEC, and Senator Mitchell." Eliza raised an eyebrow. "Mitchell? The head of the Senate Intelligence Committee?" "The very one. He's been monitoring Zhao's attempts to acquire American technology for years. This evidence would give him what he needs to block the deal on national security grounds." "How did you get this evidence in the first place?" Eliza asked. Alexander hesitated. "It's better if you don't know the specifics." "No more secrets, remember?" Eliza pressed. "Full transparency was the deal." Alexander sighed. "Fine. I've had Walter under surveillance for months. His communications, his meetings, his financials, all of it monitored by a private intelligence firm. Is that legal?" "Technically, no. Not entirely, which is why I can't just hand the evidence over myself. It needs to come from within Montgomery Enterprises, discovered through legitimate channels. So you need Caroline to find this evidence, making it appear she uncovered it through normal corporate oversight," Eliza concluded. "But if she's caught accessing your private server after you've been ousted, she'll lose her job," Alexander finished. "At minimum. At worst, she could face legal repercussions." Eliza shook her head in disbelief. "You're asking an awful lot of someone who's already lost everything because of a Montgomery." "I know," Alexander acknowledged. "But she'll do it. For me." Again, something in his tone caught Eliza's attention. She studied her husband's face, a new suspicion forming. "Alexander, is there something between you and Caroline? Not an affair, but feelings? On her part or yours?" Alexander's pause was a beat too long. "Caroline is important to me," he said carefully. "She's been by my side through the most challenging years of my career. She understands me in ways few people do." That's not an answer, Eliza pointed out. There's never been anything physical between us, Alexander said firmly. Not even close, but there is a connection, a mutual respect and understanding that has grown over the years. She's in love with you, Eliza said, the realization hitting her with surprising force. That's why she's remained so loyal all these years. That's why she'll risk everything to help you now. Alexander didn't deny it. Caroline's feelings are her own. I've never encouraged them or taken advantage of them. But you've relied on them, Eliza countered. You've depended on her devotion, even if you never acknowledged it openly. Before Alexander could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. It's Caroline now, actually. She must have news, he answered, putting the call on speaker. Caroline, you're on with both me and Eliza. There was a momentary pause. Mrs. Montgomery? Caroline acknowledged, her voice professionally neutral. I hope you're well. Thank you, Caroline, Eliza replied, equally formal. I understand you've been a tremendous support to Alexander. Another brief pause. Just doing my job, ma'am. Caroline redirected her attention. Sir, Walter Adamson's press conference has been moved up to 2 p.m. They're already setting up at the Takara headquarters downtown. Alexander checked his watch. It was 1:15 p.m. That doesn't give us much time. What about the other matter? I've located the files you mentioned, Caroline confirmed, but security has been increased on all executive servers following your departure. I'm having trouble gaining access without triggering alerts. Keep trying, Alexander urged. Use the backdoor protocol we established for the Singapore situation. Already attempted, sir. They've changed the security parameters. Alexander paced, his mind visibly working through options. What about the Mitchell angle? Any progress there? His office is willing to take a meeting, but not until tomorrow morning. Too late to stop the press conference or the preliminary signing. Eliza watched Alexander's shoulders tense. For the first time since this wild day began, she saw genuine defeat in his posture. Without access to those files, his last play was neutralized. Walter Adamson would announce the deal, Zhao Enterprises would gain access to sensitive technology, and Alexander would lose everything he had built over 20 years. Sir? Caroline prompted when Alexander remained silent. Should I continue trying the server access? Alexander looked at Eliza, and in his eyes, she saw something she hadn't witnessed in years. Vulnerability. He was out of moves, out of plans, out of the confidence that had defined him for as long as she'd known him. Caroline, Eliza said suddenly, surprising both herself and Alexander. I think I might be able to help. Mrs. Montgomery? Caroline sounded confused. My charitable foundation, Eliza continued, the idea taking shape as she spoke. We have an annual gala planned for next month. The theme is Innovation and Responsibility, celebrating companies that advance technology while maintaining ethical standards. Alexander stared at her, not yet seeing where she was going with this. I'd like to invite Mr. Zhao personally, Eliza continued, as a potential honoree, today, if possible, before the press conference. Understanding dawned on Alexander's face, followed quickly by admiration. Mrs. Montgomery, Caroline said slowly, Mr. Zhao is notoriously private. He rarely takes meetings, especially not on short notice. He'll take this one, Eliza said confidently, because it won't come from me directly. It will come from Senator Mitchell's wife, who chairs the committee that selects honorees. Ellen Mitchell, Alexander murmured. Of course. You co-chaired the Children's Hospital benefit with her last year. And the year before that, Eliza confirmed. We've become quite close. Close enough that she'd make a call on my behalf, especially if I hint that her husband has an interest in meeting Mr. Zhao as well. Caroline's voice betrayed her surprise. You would use your charitable foundation as a cover to arrange a meeting with Zhao? Not a cover, Eliza corrected. A legitimate opportunity for Mr. Zhao to enhance his company's image in the United States, which he'll need if he's planning to acquire American assets. A slow smile spread across Alexander's face, genuine admiration, not his strategic corporate expression. It's brilliant. Zhao won't be able to resist the combination of social validation and political connection. And once we have him in a room, Eliza continued, we can ask him directly about his involvement with Adamson Technologies. I can be in that meeting as your +1, Alexander added, ready to confront him with what we know, even without the documented evidence. Sir, Caroline interjected, the timing is impossible. The press conference is in less than an hour, even if Mrs. Montgomery could arrange this meeting. I can, Eliza said, already pulling out her phone. Ellen owes me a favor after I secured that donation for her literacy program. But Zhao would need to be in position to act immediately, Caroline pointed out. He's likely not even in the country. He is, Alexander countered. My sources confirmed he arrived yesterday for the final negotiations. He's staying at the Mandarin Oriental under a pseudonym. Then it's possible, Eliza said, dialing Ellen Mitchell's number. We just need to move quickly. As the phone rang, Alexander moved closer to Eliza, his eyes filled with newfound respect and something else, something that reminded her of the early days of their relationship when they were partners in every sense of the word. Thank you, he said quietly. I'm not doing this for you, Eliza clarified. I'm doing it because selling sensitive technology to a foreign entity with questionable motives is wrong. I'm doing it because Walter Adamson shouldn't win by manipulating people and processes. I'm doing it because it's right. Alexander nodded, accepting her terms. Whatever your reasons, I'm grateful and impressed. Ellen! Eliza exclaimed as her call was answered, her voice transforming into that of the polished society wife Alexander knew so well. I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, darling, I have the most extraordinary opportunity for our Innovation Gala, but I need your help right away. As Eliza laid out her plan to Ellen Mitchell, Alexander watched her with growing wonder. This was a side of his wife he had glimpsed years ago but had forgotten in his single-minded pursuit of corporate dominance. Her strategic mind, her social intelligence, her ability to move through powerful circles with grace and purpose. He had dismissed her charity work as a hobby, her social connections as frivolous. Now he was witnessing how effectively she could deploy those same resources to accomplish what all his corporate maneuvering could not. Caroline remained silent on the speakerphone, listening to Eliza work her magic. When Ellen enthusiastically agreed to contact Zhao immediately, Alexander caught Caroline's eye and mouthed, "Continue with the server access attempt." Caroline nodded, though her expression remained doubtful. "I'll keep trying, sir," she said when Eliza ended her call. "But I should warn you, security is monitoring all unusual access attempts. If I'm caught—" "You won't be," Alexander assured her. "Focus on the task. Let us handle Zhao." After Caroline disconnected, Eliza turned to Alexander, her expression determined. "Ellen's making the call to Zhao now. She thinks she can get him to meet us at the Mandarin Oriental in 30 minutes. Us? Yes, us. I'm coming with you." She held up a hand to forestall his objection. "This was my idea, my connection. I'm seeing it through." Alexander nodded slowly. "All right, but you should know what you're walking into. Zhao is dangerous, Eliza. Not just politically connected, but genuinely dangerous. If he realizes we're on to him, then we'll need to be very convincing," Eliza said firmly. "Now call Jenkins. We need to get to the Mandarin Oriental, and we don't have much time." As Alexander made the call, Eliza found herself experiencing an unexpected emotion, exhilaration. For years, she had lived in the shadow of Alexander's world, hearing only sanitized versions of his business dealings. Now she was stepping directly into that world, using her own skills and connections to influence events. It was terrifying and thrilling. Alexander ended his call and turned to her, his expression serious. "Jenkins will be here in 5 minutes. Eliza, are you absolutely sure about this? Once we confront Zhao, there's no going back. Eliza met his gaze steadily. I've spent 15 years going along with your decisions, Alexander. Being the supportive wife who asks no questions and makes no demands. Where did that get us? Divorce papers and a life half-lived. She moved toward the door, her resolve strengthening with each step. For once, I'm making the decision, and I say we stop Walter Adamson and Victor Zhao before they hurt this country. Together. Alexander followed her, a new respect in his eyes. Together, he echoed, the word carrying more weight than either of them could fully articulate. As they waited for Jenkins, Eliza's phone buzzed with a text from Ellen Mitchell. Zhao agreed. 2 p.m. Presidential Suite, come alone. She showed the message to Alexander, who frowned. That's exactly when the press conference is scheduled, and come alone is concerning. He's testing us, Eliza surmised, seeing if we'll follow his terms. It's too dangerous for you to go alone, Alexander insisted. I won't be alone, Eliza replied, a plan already forming in her mind. I'll have the most powerful businessman in America with me. Alexander raised an eyebrow. Former businessman, as of this morning, remember? Zhao doesn't need to know that, Eliza said, a determined glint in her eye. As far as he's concerned, you're still the Alexander Montgomery, the man who built an empire and isn't afraid to protect it. For the first time that day, Alexander smiled without reservation, the confident, slightly dangerous smile that had first attracted Eliza all those years ago. I knew there was a reason I fell in love with you, he said softly. The moment hung between them, fragile and charged with possibilities. Before Eliza could respond, Jenkins pulled up outside, honking once to announce his arrival. The spell broken, they moved toward the door, united by purpose, if not yet reconciled in heart. The Mandarin Oriental stood like a gleaming sentinel in the heart of the city, its distinctive architecture making it one of the most recognizable buildings in the skyline. As Jenkins pulled the Bentley to the curb, a smartly dressed valet rushed forward to open the door. I don't like this, Alexander muttered as they stepped out. The timing, the come-alone instruction, it feels like a trap. It probably is, Eliza agreed, smoothing her navy dress. But it's the only play we have. They crossed the opulent lobby, drawing glances from the hotel staff and guests. Even without his CEO title, Alexander Montgomery commanded attention. His confident stride, bespoke suit, and the almost palpable aura of power that surrounded him. Eliza, walking beside him with equal confidence, looked every inch his match. As they approached the private elevator that serviced the upper-floor suites, Alexander's phone buzzed. It's Caroline, he said, checking the screen. She's still trying to access the server. Any progress? Not yet. He pocketed the phone with a frown. We're on our own for now. The elevator attendant checked their names against a list, then used a special key to activate the button for the presidential suite. As the doors closed and they began their ascent, Eliza felt her heart rate accelerate. She'd met powerful people before through her charitable work, but Victor Zhao was something else entirely, a shadowy figure whose influence extended across continents, blending legitimate business with rumored connections to more questionable enterprises. Remember, Alexander said quietly, Zhao didn't build his empire by being sentimental or easily intimidated. He respects power and despises weakness. No matter what happens in there, show no fear. Eliza nodded, fighting the urge to reach for Alexander's hand. Despite everything that had transpired between them, his presence beside her was reassuring. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be part of a team with him, facing challenges together instead of across from each other. The elevator chimed softly as they reached the top floor. The doors opened to reveal a private foyer where a man in an immaculate suit stood waiting. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with the watchful eyes and precise posture that screamed security professional. Mrs. Montgomery, he greeted her with a slight bow, notably ignoring Alexander. Mr. Zhao is expecting you. Please follow me. As they walked down the hallway, Alexander placed his hand lightly on the small of Eliza's back, a gesture that felt both protective and possessive. She was surprised by how natural it felt, how her body remembered this small intimacy even after years of distance. The security man stopped before an ornate double door, knocked once, and opened it without waiting for a response. He gestured for them to enter, his expression revealing nothing. The presidential suite was breathtaking. A massive open-concept living space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city and river beyond. The decor blended Eastern and Western aesthetics with priceless art pieces placed throughout the room with casual elegance. Standing by the windows, his back to them as he gazed out at the city below, was a slender man in a charcoal gray suit. He turned slowly at their entrance, revealing a face that rarely appeared in photographs. Victor Zhao, one of the most powerful businessmen in Asia. In his mid-50s, Zhao had the kind of ageless quality that came from meticulous self-care and the best medical treatments money could buy. His silver-streaked black hair was impeccably styled, his face unlined except for subtle creases around his eyes that suggested a man who smiled rarely but genuinely. His dark eyes assessed them with clinical precision. "Mrs. Montgomery," he greeted Eliza, his accent barely perceptible. "What an unexpected pleasure." His gaze shifted to Alexander, and a small smile curved his lips. "And Mr. Montgomery, despite the explicit instruction to come alone, how very predictable." "Mr. Zhao," Eliza stepped forward, extending her hand. "Thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice. Ellen Mitchell speaks very highly of you." Zhao took her hand, his grip firm but not aggressive. "Senator Mitchell's wife has always been most gracious, though I suspect this meeting has little to do with your charitable foundation." He gestured toward a seating area where a tea service had been arranged. "Please, sit. We have limited time before I'm expected elsewhere." The press conference, Eliza thought. They had less than 30 minutes to change the course of events. As they took their seats, Zhao poured tea with practiced grace, the ceremony creating a deceptive atmosphere of civility. "Now," he said, handing Eliza a delicate porcelain cup, "perhaps you would do me the courtesy of explaining why you've engineered this meeting under false pretenses." Alexander leaned forward. "We know about the Adamson Technologies acquisition, Victor. We know Takara is just a front for Zhao Enterprises." Zhao's expression remained placid as he sipped his tea. "You've wasted your time, then. I'm here for cultural exchanges and vacation, nothing more." "Walter Adamson is holding a press conference in 20 minutes to announce the sale," Eliza said. "A sale that would give you control of proprietary technology with potential military applications. Technology that the U.S. government would never allow to fall into foreign hands if the true buyer were known." Zhao set down his teacup, his movements deliberate. "Mrs. Montgomery, you surprise me. I expected such baseless accusations from your husband, whose desperation after losing his company is well known in certain circles. But you? I thought you confined yourself to charity galas and school fundraisers." The condescension in his tone made Eliza's spine stiffen. "Perhaps that's why we're here, Mr. Zhao. Because you and others like you consistently underestimate those you deem unimportant." Zhao's eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in his composed facade. "We have evidence," Alexander interjected. "Documentation of your communications with Walter Adamson, financial transfers through shell companies, the entire structure of the deal behind Takara's facade." "Do you?" Zhao's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then why aren't government regulators knocking on my door? Why am I speaking with a disgraced former CEO and his soon-to-be ex-wife instead of federal agents?" Eliza felt her heart skip at the confirmation that Zhao knew about their impending divorce. Just how deep did his intelligence network reach? "The evidence is being processed as we speak," Alexander bluffed. "Senator Mitchell's committee will have it within the hour. This meeting is a courtesy, A chance for you to withdraw gracefully before your reputation in American business circles is irreparably damaged." Zhao laughed softly. "A courtesy? How thoughtful. And what exactly do you propose I do? Cancel a multi-billion-dollar acquisition because Alexander Montgomery asks nicely?" "Not because I ask," Alexander countered. "Because it's the only way to salvage your legitimate business interests in the United States. Once your involvement in this deal becomes public, every transaction, every contract, every acquisition by any company associated with Zhao Enterprises will face unprecedented scrutiny." For the first time, something like concern flickered across Zhao's face. He stood, buttoning his jacket as he moved back to the windows. "You're making quite substantial claims, Mr. Montgomery. Claims that would require equally substantial evidence." "Which we have," Eliza said, her voice more confident than she felt. They were still bluffing, but something in Zhao's demeanor told her they had struck a nerve. Zhao turned, his expression hardening. "Let me be clear. I have no official connection to any acquisition of Adamson Technologies. If, hypothetically, certain investment groups affiliated with my various business interests were contributing capital to Takara's expansion, that would be perfectly legal and transparent. Not if the ultimate purpose is to transfer restricted technology to entities on the Commerce Department's watch list," Alexander retorted, "which several of your subsidiaries are." Zhao's lips thinned. "You've made a serious miscalculation, Mr. Montgomery. I don't respond well to threats." "It's not a threat," Alexander replied evenly. "It's a statement of fact. This deal will not survive daylight." The suite's phone rang, breaking the tense standoff. Zhao answered it, listening briefly before responding in rapid Mandarin. His expression darkened as he hung up. "It seems," he said, addressing them both, "that someone has just leaked internal documents about the Adamson-Takara deal to several financial news outlets. Documents suggesting improper disclosure of technological assets restricted from foreign ownership." Alexander and Eliza exchanged surprised glances. Caroline must have succeeded. "How unfortunate," Alexander said, unable to keep a hint of satisfaction from his voice. "I imagine that will complicate this afternoon's press conference." Zhao's composure finally cracked. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The relationships you've damaged? The agreements you've undermined?" "I've protected American innovation and security," Alexander replied. "Something Walter Adamson was all too willing to sell to the highest bidder." Zhao moved with unexpected speed, closing the distance between them in 2 strides. "You think this ends here? That you've won some great victory?" His voice was low, dangerous. "You've made powerful enemies today, Montgomery. Both of you." Eliza stood, refusing to be intimidated despite the fear coursing through her. "We've done what's right, Mr. Zhao. Sometimes that comes with consequences." Zhao studied her face, something like reluctant respect flickering in his eyes. "Indeed it does, Mrs. Montgomery. Indeed it does." He stepped back, regaining his composure. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some urgent matters to attend to." As if on cue, the door opened and 2 security men entered. Their message was clear. The meeting was over. Alexander took Eliza's arm, guiding her toward the exit. As they reached the door, Zhao called after them. "Mr. Montgomery, this setback is temporary. There are other companies, other technologies, other Walter Adamsons who prioritize profit over patriotism." Alexander paused, turning back to face him. "And I'll be there to stop you every time." Zhao's smile was chilling. "With what resources? You've lost your company, your position, your influence. You're nothing now." "He has me," Eliza said, surprising herself with the conviction in her voice. "And that's not nothing." She felt Alexander's arm tighten around hers, a gesture of gratitude and something more complex. Zhao observed them both, his expression calculating. How touching! The disgraced tycoon and his loyal wife united against the world. He shook his head slightly. "Enjoy the moment. It won't last." The threat hung in the air as the security men escorted them out, through the hallway and into the waiting elevator. Only when the doors closed did Eliza release the breath she'd been holding. "Do you think it worked?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Before Alexander could respond, his phone buzzed. A message from Caroline. "It's done. Documents leaked to WSJ, Bloomberg, Reuters, SEC and committee notified. Adamson press conference cancelled." Alexander showed Eliza the screen, a genuine smile breaking across his face. "It worked." Caroline came through. Relief flooded Eliza's system, followed immediately by a new concern. Zhao's threats. How seriously should we take them? The elevator reached the lobby, the doors opening to the bustling hotel entrance. "Very seriously," Alexander said quietly as they crossed the marble floor. "Victor Zhao doesn't make idle threats. We've made an enemy today, one with a long memory and global reach." Outside, Jenkins was waiting with the car. As they slid into the back seat, Eliza felt the adrenaline that had carried her through the confrontation beginning to fade, leaving her shaky and uncertain. "What happens now?" she asked, as Jenkins pulled away from the curb. Alexander was staring at his phone, scrolling through an incoming barrage of messages and news alerts. Financial markets are already reacting. Takara's stock is plummeting. There are calls for investigations into Walter Adamson's dealings. The board of Montgomery Enterprises is in emergency session. "Alexander," Eliza said, touching his arm to reclaim his attention. "I meant with us. What happens with us now?" He set the phone down, turning to face her fully. In his eyes, she saw a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and uncertainty that mirrored her own feelings. "That depends," he said softly. "Those divorce papers are still sitting in Diana's briefcase. We could go back right now and sign them. End our marriage as planned. Or, Eliza prompted when he didn't continue. Alexander took her hand, his touch gentle but hesitant, as if he expected her to pull away. "Or we could see if what just happened between us, that partnership, that trust, is something worth rebuilding." Eliza looked down at their joined hands. 3 hours ago, she had been certain that signing those divorce papers was the only way forward. Now everything had shifted. Not just because of Alexander's business crisis or his revelations about Sophia Adamson, but because she had glimpsed something she thought was lost forever. The team they used to be, facing challenges together instead of alone. But was it enough? Was one afternoon of working together enough to erase years of neglect and growing distance? "I need time," she said finally. "Today has been overwhelming. I can't make this decision now, not with everything that's happened." Alexander nodded, a flash of disappointment crossing his features before he masked it. "Of course, whatever you need." As the Bentley wove through afternoon traffic, Eliza gazed out the window, her mind racing. They had successfully thwarted Zhao and Walter Adamson's plans. But in doing so, they had made dangerous enemies and upended what remained of their carefully separated lives. Whatever choice she made now, nothing would be simple again. Jenkins pulled the Bentley to a stop outside Alexander's downtown penthouse. Neither of them had spoken much during the ride from the Mandarin Oriental, both lost in their own thoughts as news alerts continued to buzz on their phones. Walter Adamson's press conference had indeed been cancelled. Financial analysts were scrambling to explain Takara's sudden stock plunge. Business channels were speculating about unspecified regulatory concerns regarding the acquisition. "Where would you like to go now, Mrs. Montgomery?" Jenkins asked, breaking the silence. Before Eliza could respond, Alexander's phone rang. He checked the screen. "It's the board chair," he said, surprise evident in his voice. "You should take it," Eliza urged. Alexander nodded, answering the call. "Richard, this is unexpected." He listened intently, his expression changing from guarded to astonished. "I see. Yes, I'll be there in 20 minutes. He ended the call, turning to Eliza with barely contained excitement. "The board wants to meet with me immediately. The Zhao connection to Takara has been confirmed by multiple sources. They're reconsidering this morning's decision. They want you back, Eliza concluded. It sounds that way. Alexander seemed momentarily torn. But I don't want to leave you, not after everything that's happened today. Eliza studied his face, noting the genuine conflict there. The old Alexander would have rushed to that meeting without a second thought, placing business before personal concerns every time. This hesitation, this consideration of her feelings first, was something new, or perhaps something very old, resurfacing after years of being buried under ambition and corporate pressures. "Go," she said gently. "This is important. I understand." "Come with me," he suggested, surprising her again. "You were instrumental in stopping Zhao. You should be part of this." Eliza shook her head. "That meeting room is your arena, not mine. Besides, I need some time to think. About everything." Alexander nodded, accepting her decision. "Jenkins will take you wherever you'd like to go. And Eliza—" He hesitated, as if weighing his next words carefully. "Thank you, not just for today, but for showing me what I've been missing all these years." He leaned forward, placing a gentle kiss on her cheek. The familiar scent of his cologne, sandalwood and bergamot, enveloped her, triggering memories of happier times, of intimacy and connection long lost. "I'll call you as soon as the meeting is over," he promised, pulling back. "Good luck," she offered as he exited the car. She watched him walk toward the building entrance, his confidence visibly restored, his stride purposeful. It was the Alexander she had fallen in love with, determined, focused, but with a warmth that few people were privileged to see. "Where to, Mrs. Montgomery?" Jenkins asked again as Alexander disappeared inside. Eliza considered for a moment. She didn't want to go back to her small apartment, which suddenly seemed lonely and incomplete. The River House held too many emotions after their conversation there, and their former shared home, the mansion in the suburbs, had felt empty and cold for years before she'd finally moved out. "The park," she decided. "By the water." Jenkins nodded, pulling smoothly away from the curb. As they drove, Eliza's phone rang. Diana Wells, her divorce attorney, calling for the third time since they'd abruptly left the meeting that morning. She hesitated, then answered. "Diana." "Eliza, thank God. Where are you? What's happening? I've been calling for hours." Diana's voice was sharp with concern and professional frustration. "The legal team is still waiting. Should we reschedule the signing?" Eliza gazed out the window at the city streets passing by. How could she explain what had transpired since they'd left the Montgomery Enterprises conference room? It all seemed surreal. Corporate espionage, national security threats, confrontations in luxury hotel suites, and beneath it all, the unexpected rekindling of something between her and Alexander. "I need more time," she said finally. "Something's come up. I can't explain right now." "Eliza," Diana's voice turned warning, "if this is Alexander manipulating you again—" "It's not like that," Eliza interrupted. "This is my decision. I just need space to think clearly." A heavy sigh came through the phone. "The filing deadline is Friday if you want this finalized this quarter. That gives you 2 more days to sign the papers." "I understand. Thank you, Diana." After ending the call, Eliza leaned her head against the cool window glass, watching the city blur past. 2 days to decide whether to end her marriage or give it another chance. 2 days to determine if what she'd glimpsed today, the partnership, the respect, the shared purpose, was genuine or just a temporary alignment of interests in a crisis. Jenkins pulled up to the park entrance. "I'll wait here, Mrs. Montgomery." "Thank you, Jenkins. I won't be long." The Riverside Park was relatively quiet for a weekday afternoon. Eliza followed the winding path down to the water's edge, finding an empty bench facing the river. The same river that flowed past their weekend house, she realized, a continuous thread connecting different chapters of her life with Alexander. She sat, watching the sunlight play across the water's surface, trying to untangle her thoughts. today had revealed so many truths about Alexander's business dealings, about the photos that had precipitated their separation, about her own capabilities when pushed into his high-stakes world. But the most unsettling revelation was how easily they had fallen back into sync with each other, anticipating each other's thoughts, supporting each other's plays, presenting a united front to both Walter Adamson and Victor Zhao. That kind of connection couldn't be manufactured or faked. It had always been there, buried beneath years of neglect and growing distance. Her phone buzzed with a text from Caroline. "Mr. Montgomery asked me to update you. Board meeting going well. Vote expected soon." Eliza smiled slightly at the formality. Caroline had always addressed her as Mrs. Montgomery, maintaining professional distance despite their frequent interactions over the years. Now that Eliza knew the depth of Caroline's feelings for Alexander, that careful distance made more sense. Did she resent Caroline? The woman who had spent more time with her husband in recent years than she had, who understood his work, his ambitions, his daily struggles in ways Eliza no longer did. Surprisingly, she found she didn't. Caroline's loyalty to Alexander was understandable. He inspired that in people. He always had. The question was whether he could inspire something deeper in Eliza again, not just loyalty or admiration, but love, the kind of love that had brought them together in the first place before ambition and success had created this vast, empty space between them. Lost in thought, she didn't notice the man approaching until he sat down beside her on the bench. "Beautiful day," Walter Adamson said casually, as if they were simply two strangers enjoying the park. Eliza's body tensed, adrenaline flooding her system. She glanced around, noting two large men in suits standing at a discreet distance, Adamson's security. "Mr. Adamson," she acknowledged, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart, "I believe your press conference was cancelled." Adamson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "A temporary setback, one of many I've faced over the decades." He was dressed impeccably in a tailored gray suit, his silver hair catching the afternoon sunlight. To casual observers, they might appear to be colleagues or business acquaintances having a pleasant conversation. Only Eliza could feel the menace emanating from him, carefully contained beneath his polished exterior. "What do you want?" she asked directly. "Straight to the point. I appreciate that." Adamson turned slightly to face her. "I want to understand why a woman who was minutes away from divorcing her husband would suddenly join forces with him to sabotage a business deal that would have eliminated her soon-to-be ex from the competitive landscape." The knowledge that he knew about their divorce proceedings was unsettling but not surprising after Zhao had mentioned it. "Perhaps I care more about preventing sensitive American technology from falling into questionable foreign hands than I do about personal grievances," she replied. Adamson laughed, the sound surprisingly genuine. "Oh, I doubt that very much, Mrs. Montgomery. No one throws away 15 years of marriage and then risks making an enemy of Victor Zhao over abstract patriotic principles." His eyes narrowed. "Alexander got to you somehow, convinced you to postpone the divorce and help him one last time. You seem very interested in my marriage," Eliza observed, trying to buy time as she considered her options. Jenkins was too far away to see her. Her phone was in her handbag. Adamson's security men effectively blocked easy escape routes. "I'm interested in understanding my opponents," Adamson corrected. "Alexander, I know. His motivations, his strategies, his weaknesses, all predictable after years of competition. But you—" He studied her face with uncomfortable intensity. "You were the wild card today, the element I didn't account for." "I'm sorry to have inconvenienced your plans to sell restricted technology to a foreign government," Eliza said, injecting steel into her voice. Adamson waved his hand dismissively. "The technology isn't the point. It never was. This was about destroying Alexander Montgomery, about watching him lose everything he's built. The company, the reputation, the legacy. And yes, the wife, the complete dismantling of a man who spent decades believing himself untouchable." The raw hatred in his voice shocked Eliza. "This vendetta, it's not just business, is it?" "It's personal." "Very personal," Adamson confirmed, his expression darkening. "Did Alexander ever tell you what he did to my family 20 years ago? How he leveraged inside information from my brother-in-law to orchestrate a hostile takeover of my first company? How that brother-in-law committed suicide when the betrayal came to light?" Eliza felt cold, despite the warm afternoon sun. "No," she said quietly. "He never mentioned that." "Of course not." Adamson's smile was bitter. It wasn't his proudest moment, but it was the foundation of Montgomery Enterprises, built on the broken trust and broken life of my family. "I'm sorry for your loss," Eliza said carefully. "But save your condolences," Adamson cut her off. "I don't want your pity. What I want is for you to understand what kind of man you're considering reconciling with. Alexander Montgomery hasn't changed, Mrs. Montgomery. He's facing a setback, so he's showing you what you want to see. The attentive husband, the ethical businessman. Once he regains his footing, he'll revert to form. He always does." Eliza met his gaze steadily. "With all due respect, Mr. Adamson, you don't know my husband the way I do." "Perhaps not," Adamson conceded, standing. "But I know men like him. I know what drives them, what they value most. And I promise you, it isn't love or family or moral principles." He straightened his jacket. "It's power. Everything else is negotiable." He reached into his pocket, extracting a business card which he placed on the bench beside her. "When you realize I'm right, and you will, call me. I could use someone with your connections and unexpected tactical skills." Eliza stared at the card but didn't pick it up. "Why would I ever work with you?" "Because Alexander's reinstatement to the board is temporary," Adamson said confidently. "The evidence that forced them to reconsider this morning won't hold up under scrutiny. I've already set those wheels in motion." "What do you mean?" "Let's just say certain key documents in that leak will soon be proven forgeries. Skillful ones, but forgeries nonetheless." Adamson's smile widened at her shocked expression. "Oh yes, Mrs. Montgomery. By this time tomorrow, your husband will be disgraced all over again, not just removed from his company, but potentially facing federal charges for market manipulation and fraud." "That's impossible," Eliza protested. "Caroline accessed legitimate files from Alexander's server." "Did she?" Adamson raised an eyebrow. "Or did she access files that I arranged to have planted there weeks ago, knowing they'd eventually be discovered and used exactly as they were today?" Eliza felt her confidence wavering. Could he be telling the truth? Had they walked right into an elaborate trap? "Think about it," Adamson continued. "Who stood to gain the most from today's events? Not Alexander, he's already lost his company. Not Zhao. He's facing regulatory scrutiny that could derail legitimate business interests. But me, I now have justification to sue Montgomery Enterprises for defamation and tortious interference. I have grounds to demand a federal investigation into your husband's allegedly fraudulent claims about my dealings with Zhao." He checked his watch casually. "Alexander may be celebrating with the board right now, but by this time tomorrow, he'll be meeting with criminal defense attorneys. Unless..." "Unless what?" Eliza asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Unless someone close to him, someone like his wife perhaps, convinces him to publicly retract today's allegations and resign permanently from Montgomery Enterprises." Adamson's voice was smooth, reasonable. A dignified exit. No criminal charges. His personal wealth intact if somewhat diminished. The ultimatum hung in the air between them. Eliza's mind raced, trying to determine if Adamson was bluffing or if they truly had been outmaneuvered from the start. "Why are you telling me this?" she finally asked. "Why not go directly to Alexander?" Adamson's expression softened fractionally. "Because unlike your husband, I don't enjoy watching families destroyed as collateral damage in business wars. My quarrel is with Alexander, not with you. This gives you both a choice, a chance to walk away with something rather than losing everything. He nodded toward his business card. "Think about it. But don't think too long. My offer expires at noon tomorrow." With that, he turned and walked away, his security men falling in step behind him. Eliza watched them go, her mind whirling with new uncertainties and fears. Was Walter Adamson telling the truth about the forged documents? About Alexander's role in his brother-in-law's suicide? About the criminal charges that could be coming? Or was this just another manipulation, a desperate attempt to snatch victory from defeat? She picked up Adamson's card, turning it over in her fingers as she considered her options. One thing was certain. She couldn't make this decision alone. After 15 years of being kept separate from Alexander's business world, she was now inextricably part of it. For better or worse, their fates were intertwined again. Eliza sat in the Bentley outside Montgomery Enterprises headquarters, Walter Adamson's business card burning a hole in her purse. She'd been waiting for nearly an hour, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen across the plaza. According to Caroline's updates, the board meeting was running long, a positive sign for Alexander's reinstatement, but it left Eliza alone with her turbulent thoughts. Was Adamson telling the truth? Had Alexander built his empire on the destruction of Adamson's family? Were the documents they'd used to expose Zhao's involvement actually forgeries planted as bait in an elaborate trap? The questions circled her mind like vultures, each possibility more disturbing than the last. She needed answers, and there was only one person who could provide them. Her phone chimed with another text from Caroline. "Meeting concluded. Mr. Montgomery would like you to join him in his office." His office. Not the former CEO's office, a good sign. "We're going in, Jenkins," Eliza announced, gathering her resolve along with her purse. The lobby of Montgomery Enterprises had a different energy now compared to that morning. The employees moved with purpose rather than the subdued caution she'd witnessed earlier. Several nodded respectfully as she passed, a few even offering congratulatory smiles. Word traveled fast in corporate circles. The executive elevator opened directly into the reception area where Caroline sat at her desk, her posture perfect as always, her expression professionally neutral despite the chaos of the day. "Mrs. Montgomery," she greeted Eliza, rising from her chair. "Mr. Montgomery is expecting you. He's just finishing a call with Senator Mitchell." Eliza studied the younger woman, seeing her through new eyes now that she knew about her history with Alexander, her loyalty born from gratitude and something deeper. There was no resentment or jealousy in Caroline's manner, only a careful politeness that respected boundaries while acknowledging their shared connection to Alexander. "Thank you, Caroline," Eliza said warmly, "and thank you for what you did today. Alexander told me about your father, about how you came to work here. I understand now why you've stood by him all these years." Something flickered in Caroline's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at being seen so clearly. "Mr. Montgomery gave me a chance when no one else would," she said simply. "I believe in him, in what he's building here." The present tense, is building, not was building, confirmed what Eliza had suspected. Alexander had been reinstated. "I know you do," Eliza said softly, "and he's fortunate to have your loyalty." Before Caroline could respond, the door to Alexander's office opened and he appeared, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, the picture of a man who had weathered a storm and emerged victorious. "Eliza," he said, his face lighting up at the sight of her. "Come in, please. I have so much to tell you." As she entered his office, he closed the door behind them, then surprised her by pulling her into an embrace. "We did it," he murmured against her hair. "The board unanimously voted to reinstate me as CEO. Senator Mitchell is already moving to block any Zhao-affiliated acquisition of Adamson Technologies. Walter is facing a Securities and Exchange Commission investigation for his dealings with foreign entities." Eliza allowed herself a moment to feel his warmth, to absorb his triumph, before gently extracting herself from his arms. "Alexander, we need to talk." Something in her tone made his smile fade. What's wrong? What's happened? She moved to the windows, needing space to think clearly. After you left for your meeting, I went to the park by the river. Walter Adamson found me there. Alexander's body tensed visibly. Adamson approached you? Did he threaten you? Not explicitly, Eliza said, turning to face him. But he told me things. Things I need you to explain. Alexander's expression became guarded. What things? He said that the foundation of Montgomery Enterprises, your first major success, came from exploiting information from his brother-in-law, information that led to that man's suicide when the betrayal was exposed. She watched his face carefully. Is that true? Alexander was silent for a long moment, conflict evident in his eyes. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and pained. Not the way he describes it, but there's truth in it. Eliza felt her heart sink. Tell me what happened. All of it. Alexander moved to his desk, leaning against it heavily. 20 years ago, I was nobody. Just another ambitious young man with big ideas and no capital. Edward Reeves was Adamson's brother-in-law and CFO of Adamson's first company, Nexus Technologies. He paused as if gathering the courage to continue. Edward and I met at an industry conference. We got along well. Started meeting for drinks occasionally, talking business, technology trends, market opportunities. And you pumped him for information about Nexus, Eliza surmised. Not initially, Alexander insisted. It wasn't calculated like that. We were just two guys in the same industry talking shop. But over time, yes. He shared things he shouldn't have. Financial difficulties Nexus was facing, strategic weaknesses, acquisition targets they couldn't afford to pursue. And you used that information. Alexander nodded slowly. I raised capital based on what I knew, positioned my fledgling company to acquire assets Nexus couldn't afford but desperately needed. Eventually, I made an offer to buy Nexus itself, leveraging their own weaknesses against them. Did you know what it would do to Edward? Eliza asked quietly. Pain flickered across Alexander's face. I knew it would damage his career when it came out that he'd been the source of the information. I didn't know it would destroy him. He ran a hand through his hair. When the acquisition was finalized, Edward was fired. Adamson publicly accused him of corporate espionage, threatened legal action. Edward's reputation was ruined overnight. And he took his own life, Eliza finished. 3 weeks later, Alexander confirmed, his voice hollow, left behind a wife, Adamson's sister, and 2 young children. The office fell silent, the weight of this 2-decade-old tragedy hanging heavy in the air between them. Eliza tried to reconcile this revelation with the man she had married, the ambitious but ethical businessman she had believed in, supported, loved. Why didn't you ever tell me this? She asked finally. Because I was ashamed, Alexander admitted. It's the darkest chapter in my professional history. I've spent 20 years trying to atone for it, creating thousands of jobs, establishing the foundation's educational programs, mentoring young entrepreneurs so they don't make the same mistakes I did. Does Adamson know that? About your attempts to make amends? He wouldn't care if he did, Alexander said bitterly. To him, I'll always be the man who destroyed his family. Nothing I do will ever change that. Eliza processed this, trying to fit this new piece into the puzzle of their fractured marriage. Was this why you always kept me separate from your business life? Because you were afraid I'd discover things like this? Alexander met her gaze, his expression vulnerable in a way she rarely witnessed. Partly. I wanted to be the man you thought I was, someone worthy of your admiration and love. I was afraid if you saw some of the hard choices, the compromises, the mistakes I've made building this company, I'd what? You'd look at me the way you're looking at me now, he said quietly. Like you're seeing a stranger. The raw honesty of his response caught Eliza off guard. Before she could reply, Alexander continued. his voice stronger. But that's not an excuse. I was wrong to shut you out. Wrong to think I was protecting you when I was really protecting myself. Today showed me what we could have been all along, partners in every sense. His words resonated with her own earlier thoughts, but Eliza knew they couldn't move forward without addressing everything. Alexander, there's more. Adamson made claims about today's events, about the documents Caroline leaked. Alexander frowned. What claims? He said the documents were forgeries, planted on your server weeks ago, knowing they'd eventually be discovered and used exactly as they were today. Eliza watched his expression carefully. He said by tomorrow they'll be proven fake and you'll be facing criminal charges for market manipulation and fraud. To her surprise, Alexander's face relaxed into a slight smile. Of course he'd say that. It's his only play left. You don't seem concerned. Because I know my files, Eliza. The communications between Adamson and Zhao are genuine. The financial transfers are traceable through legitimate banking channels. Caroline didn't just download documents, she accessed server logs, encryption certificates, digital signatures, things that can't be faked, at least not convincingly enough to fool federal investigators. Hope flickered within Eliza. So it was a bluff? Adamson's threat? A desperate one, Alexander confirmed. He's trying to use you to influence me, to get me to back down when he has no real leverage. He offered me a deal, Eliza admitted. Said if I convinced you to publicly retract the allegations and resign permanently from Montgomery Enterprises, he'd ensure no criminal charges were filed against you. Alexander's expression hardened. Typical Walter, always looking for the vulnerability, the pressure point. His gaze softened as it returned to her. And he thought you were mine. Aren't I? Eliza asked quietly. Alexander moved closer, taking her hands in his. You've never been my vulnerability, Eliza. You've been my strength. I just forgot that somewhere along the way. The tenderness in his voice, the genuine regret in his eyes, moved something deep within her. Yet questions remained. If Adamson was bluffing about the documents, what about his other threat? That his true goal was to destroy you completely. Your company, your reputation, your marriage. That part, I believe, Alexander said grimly. Walter Adamson has been plotting his revenge for 20 years. Today was supposed to be his moment of triumph, watching me lose everything in a single day. Instead, it backfired spectacularly. So what happens now? Now the real work begins. The SEC investigation into Adamson's dealings will take months. The committee hearings on foreign acquisition of sensitive technology could drag on for years. Montgomery Enterprises has weathered the immediate crisis, but we're still vulnerable. And Zhao? Eliza asked, remembering the dangerous man's parting threat. Alexander's expression grew serious. Zhao doesn't forgive perceived humiliation. He'll look for other ways to acquire the technology he wants, other vulnerabilities to exploit, and he'll remember our role in today's events. You're worried. Cautious, Alexander corrected. Victor Zhao plays a long game. He might retaliate next week or next year. We'll need to be vigilant. The "we" didn't escape Eliza's notice. Despite everything revealed today, the past mistakes, the ongoing dangers, Alexander was including her in his future plans, assuming a partnership neither of them had truly embraced for years. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with a text. He checked it, his expression turning grim. "What is it?" Eliza asked. "Caroline just got word from our security team. Someone tried to break into your apartment an hour ago." Fear shot through Eliza. "Adamson or Zhao," Alexander said, already reaching for his jacket. "Either way, it's not safe for you to return there tonight." The image of Victor Zhao's cold eyes flashed through Eliza's mind, along with his parting words. "You've made powerful enemies today. Both of you." "Where should I go?" she asked, suddenly feeling vulnerable in a way she hadn't before. The corporate intrigue that had seemed almost exciting earlier now had real-world consequences, dangerous ones. Alexander hesitated before responding, clearly weighing his words carefully. You could stay at the River House. It's secure, private. Or, Eliza prompted when he didn't continue. Or you could come home, he said simply. Our home, where I can ensure you're protected. The invitation hung between them, laden with implications beyond mere safety concerns. Going home meant something more than just returning to a physical space. It meant stepping back into a life she had been on the verge of leaving permanently just that morning. Alexander, A sharp knock interrupted her. Caroline opened the door, her usually composed face tight with urgency. Sir, Mrs. Montgomery, she said quickly. Security just called. There's a situation in the lobby. Walter Adamson is here with federal agents. They're demanding to speak with you immediately. Alexander and Eliza exchanged alarmed glances. Perhaps Adamson's threats hadn't been entirely bluffs after all. Tell them we'll be right down, Alexander said, his CEO persona slipping back into place, calm, authoritative, unshakable. As Caroline left, he turned to Eliza, his expression softening. Whatever happens next, we face it together, if you'll stand with me. Eliza took a deep breath, weighing 15 years of marriage against a single dramatic day of revelations and reconnections. She thought of the divorce papers still waiting in Diana's briefcase, of Adamson's terrible allegations, of the danger that might now follow them both. Then she thought of how seamlessly they had worked together against Zhao, how natural it had felt to be partners again after so many years apart. Together, she agreed, taking his offered hand. Whatever awaited them in the lobby, federal agents, accusations, or worse, at least they would face it as a united front. For now, that would have to be enough. The elevator ride to the lobby felt interminable. Alexander stood beside Eliza, their hands still joined, his thumb absently stroking the back of her hand in a gesture that was both reassuring and intimate. Caroline had insisted on accompanying them, her tablet in hand, ready to document whatever occurred. Remember, Alexander said quietly as the elevator slowed, no matter what Adamson claims, the documents are genuine. We have verification protocols that prove their authenticity. Eliza nodded, drawing strength from his confidence. And if they ask about my involvement? The truth, Alexander replied. You were with me as my wife, supporting a decision that protects American technology from inappropriate foreign acquisition. As the doors opened, they were met with a scene of controlled chaos. Walter Adamson stood in the center of the lobby, flanked by 3 people in dark suits, 2 men and a woman, all with the unmistakable bearing of federal agents. Security personnel from Montgomery Enterprises formed a loose perimeter while curious employees gathered at a distance, watching the confrontation unfold. Adamson spotted them immediately, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. Alexander, and Eliza too. How convenient. You've saved us the trouble of hunting you down separately. Alexander stepped forward, his posture relaxed but alert. Walter, twice in one day. To what do I owe this unexpected pleasure? The woman beside Adamson stepped forward, opening a leather credentials wallet. Mr. Montgomery, I'm Special Agent Rebecca Chen with the FBI. We have some questions regarding potentially fraudulent documents distributed to the press earlier today. Of course, Alexander replied smoothly. I'm happy to cooperate, though I'm curious why Mr. Adamson is present for an official FBI investigation. Agent Chen's expression remained neutral. Mr. Adamson has made serious allegations regarding both the documents in question and your role in their distribution. Given the significant market disruption caused by these events, we're moving quickly to determine their validity. I understand, Alexander said. Perhaps we should move this discussion to a more private setting. My conference room is available. That won't be necessary, the second agent interjected. We have a warrant to search your servers and electronic communications." He produced a document, which Alexander accepted and scanned quickly. "This warrant specifically references my personal server," Alexander noted, "which I no longer have access to following my temporary removal as CEO this morning." His emphasis on temporary didn't go unnoticed. "However, now that the board has reinstated me, I'll happily provide whatever access you need." Adamson's smug expression faltered slightly. "Reinstated? That's impossible. The evidence against you was compelling enough for the board to reconsider its hasty decision," Alexander finished for him, "especially after multiple independent sources confirmed the authenticity of the communications between you and Zhao Enterprises." Agent Chen looked between the two men, her professional demeanor not quite concealing her interest in this corporate chess match. "Mr. Montgomery, we'll need access to those servers immediately. Our technical team is waiting outside." Caroline stepped forward. "I can escort your team to our IT department and facilitate access, Agent Chen." As Caroline led the agents toward the security checkpoint, Adamson remained, his earlier confidence visibly shaken. "This isn't over, Alexander," he said, his voice low enough that only Alexander and Eliza could hear. "You think you've outmaneuvered me again, but you've only delayed the inevitable." Alexander regarded him calmly. "Walter, I'm truly sorry about Edward. I've carried that regret for 20 years, but this vendetta has consumed you. It's time to let it go." "Let it go?" Adamson's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby employees. "You destroyed my family. My sister lost her husband, her children lost their father, all because you couldn't build your precious empire honestly." Eliza felt Alexander tense beside her, but his voice remained steady. "I didn't force Edward to share company information with me, Walter, and I certainly never intended for him to take his own life. That tragedy haunts me too." "Don't you dare pretend you have any right to Edward's grief," Adamson hissed. "You used him, discarded him, and built your fortune on his corpse." "That's enough," Eliza interjected, unable to stay silent any longer. "Whatever happened 20 years ago, Alexander has spent the intervening decades creating jobs, supporting education initiatives, and building ethical business practices that have become industry standards." Adamson turned his cold gaze on her. "Defending him already? What happened to those divorce papers you were so eager to sign this morning?" "My marriage is none of your concern," Eliza replied evenly. "What should concern you is the investigation that's currently underway into your dealings with Zhao Enterprises." "An investigation based on forged documents," Adamson countered. "We both know they're not forged, Walter," Alexander said quietly. "Just as we both know what Zhao really intended to do with Adamson Technologies' intellectual property, you were willing to sell sensitive American technology to a foreign entity with questionable intentions, all to satisfy your thirst for revenge against me." Something dangerous flashed in Adamson's eyes. "You have no idea what I'm willing to do, Alexander. None at all." The threat hung in the air for a moment before Adamson straightened his jacket and turned to leave. At the lobby doors, he paused to look back at them. "Enjoy your victory lap. It will be brief." As Adamson's figure disappeared through the revolving doors, Eliza released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "He's not going to stop, is he?" "No," Alexander admitted. "But for now, we've bought ourselves some breathing room. The FBI will verify the document's authenticity, Adamson's deal with Zhao will collapse completely, and Montgomery Enterprises will remain intact. And Adamson will be planning his next move," Eliza finished. Alexander nodded grimly. "Along with Zhao. Neither of them forgives easily." One of the FBI agents approached them, a tablet in hand. "Mr. Montgomery, we need to take formal statements from both you and Mrs. Montgomery regarding your knowledge of these documents and how they came into your possession." "Of course," Alexander agreed. "Perhaps we could use my office. It would be more comfortable than conducting interviews here in the lobby." As they rode back up in the elevator, Eliza found herself examining the agent's face, searching for clues about whether this investigation was truly routine or something more sinister. Could Adamson have allies within the FBI? Could Zhao's influence extend that far? The next few hours passed in a blur of formal statements, technical explanations, and careful navigation of questions designed to trap them in inconsistencies. Alexander handled his interview with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to intense scrutiny, while Eliza relied on simple honesty, explaining her limited knowledge of the documents themselves but her complete confidence in their authenticity. By the time the agents departed, the sun had set, leaving the Montgomery Enterprises tower illuminated against the night sky. Eliza stood at the window of Alexander's office, watching the city lights come alive below. "You were remarkable today," Alexander said, joining her at the window. "From the confrontation with Zhao to standing up to Adamson to handling the FBI questioning, you've stepped into this world without missing a beat." Eliza smiled faintly. "I surprised myself. All these years I thought I wouldn't understand your world, that I couldn't possibly contribute to it. But today felt natural," Alexander finished for her. "Like we were always meant to be partners in this, not just in name." The word partners resonated with her. How long had it been since she'd truly felt like Alexander's partner, rather than an afterthought in his busy life? Years, certainly. Perhaps even a decade. "Alexander," she began hesitantly, "today has been extraordinary in many ways. We've faced corporate espionage, foreign threats, federal investigations, things I never imagined being part of. And we've done it together as a team." "We have," he agreed, watching her carefully. "But one remarkable day doesn't erase years of distance," she continued. "One crisis faced together doesn't automatically repair all that's broken between us." Pain flickered in his eyes, but he nodded. "I know. I need time," Eliza said gently. "Time to process everything that's happened. Time to decide if what I felt today, that connection, that partnership, is something we can truly rebuild or just a temporary alignment brought on by extraordinary circumstances." Alexander was silent for a long moment, his gaze returning to the city lights. "Where will you go tonight? Your apartment isn't safe." "The River House," Eliza decided. "I think some time alone there might help me sort through everything." "I'll have Jenkins drive you," Alexander offered. "And I'll arrange for security, discreetly. After today's events, we can't be too careful." A soft knock at the door interrupted them. Caroline entered, her normally impeccable appearance showing signs of the day's strain. "Sir, I've just received word from our security team. They've completed a sweep of Mrs. Montgomery's apartment. Nothing appears to have been taken, but they found surveillance equipment, recently installed." Eliza felt a chill run down her spine. "Someone was monitoring me? For how long?" "The devices appear to be new," Caroline replied. "Likely placed within the last 24 hours. Alexander's expression hardened. "Adamson or Zhao?" "The team couldn't determine the source," Caroline admitted. "But the technology is sophisticated, military grade." "Zhao, then," Alexander concluded. "His connections to Chinese intelligence are well documented, if never officially confirmed." The implications were disturbing. If Zhao had been monitoring Eliza's apartment, what else might he have access to? What other moves might he be making against them even now? "I've taken the liberty of arranging a full security sweep of the River House," Caroline continued, anticipating Alexander's next concern. "A team will complete it before Mrs. Montgomery arrives." "Thank you, Caroline," Alexander said with genuine appreciation. "I don't know what I'd do without you." A flicker of something, longing perhaps, or simple devotion, crossed Caroline's face before her professional mask returned. "Just doing my job, sir." After Caroline departed, Alexander turned back to Eliza. "I don't like the idea of you being alone at the River House, even with security. Zhao is not someone to underestimate." "I'll be careful," Eliza promised. "But I need this time, Alexander, to think, to decide." He nodded reluctantly. "I understand, but promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Don't sign those divorce papers. Not yet. Not until you're absolutely certain it's what you want." The request hung between them, weighted with all that had transpired in this extraordinary day. This morning, signing those papers had seemed like the only path forward, the inevitable conclusion to years of growing distance and mutual disappointment. Now everything felt less certain, more nuanced. "I promise," Eliza said finally. "No decisions until I'm sure." Relief washed over Alexander's face. He reached for her hand, raising it to his lips in a gesture that was both courtly and intimate. "That's all I ask. A chance to show you that what we experienced today, that partnership, that connection, wasn't just a response to crisis. It's who we were always meant to be together." As his lips brushed her skin, Eliza felt an involuntary shiver of response. Despite everything, the revelations about his past, the dangers they now faced, the years of neglect that had led them to the brink of divorce, there was still something between them, something powerful enough to have survived 15 years of gradual estrangement. The question was whether that something was worth rebuilding a life around, or merely a ghost of what once was, familiar, occasionally powerful, but ultimately insubstantial. "Jenkins will be waiting in the garage," Alexander said, releasing her hand reluctantly. "The security team will be in place at the river house before you arrive. I've also taken the liberty of having some things sent over. Food, clothes, necessities." "Thank you," Eliza said, gathering her purse. At the door, she paused, looking back at him. Standing there in his office, reinstated, victorious, yet somehow more human than she'd seen him in years, he was simultaneously the ambitious young man she'd fallen in love with and the powerful, complex man he'd become. "Be careful, Alexander," she said softly. "Adamson and Zhao aren't finished, not by a long shot." "I know," he acknowledged, "but for the first time in a very long time, I'm not facing them alone." His smile was gentle, almost shy. "Even if you're at the river house, I know you're with me in ways that matter." As Eliza rode the elevator down to the garage level, her mind spun with the day's events, revelations, and choices. 12 hours ago, she had entered this building prepared to end her marriage. Now she was leaving it having promised to reconsider that decision after a day that had completely upended her understanding of Alexander, his world, and her place in it. What awaited her at the river house wasn't just a quiet place to think, but a reckoning with 15 years of marriage, its failures, its possibilities, and the question of whether what they had found together today was strong enough to build a future on. The river house welcomed Eliza with familiar silence. After Jenkins departed and the security team verified the property was clear, she found herself alone for the first time since this tumultuous day began. The contrast between the morning's certainty about signing divorce papers and the evening's complicated doubts was staggering. She moved through the rooms slowly, rediscovering spaces that had once held so much joy. Alexander had indeed arranged for necessities. The refrigerator was stocked, fresh towels hung in the bathroom, and a suitcase of her clothes waited in the bedroom. His attentiveness felt both comforting and overwhelming. On the kitchen counter sat a bottle of the Bordeaux she'd always favored, alongside a note in Alexander's distinctive handwriting. "Whatever you decide, know that today reminded me of what matters most. Not the company, not the power, but us. Take all the time you need. I'll be waiting." Eliza poured herself a glass, carrying it to the porch that overlooked the river. The night was clear, stars reflected in the dark water flowing past. She sat in one of the Adirondack chairs, letting the gentle sounds of nature wash over her as she tried to untangle her thoughts. Had today been an anomaly? A perfect storm of crisis that had temporarily reunited them in purpose, only to fade once normalcy returned? Or had it revealed something essential that had been buried beneath years of neglect and misunderstanding? Her phone buzzed with a text from Diana. Still have the papers. Deadline still Friday. Call me when you're ready. Friday. Just over 24 hours to decide whether 15 years of marriage deserved another chance. Another text followed, this one from Alexander. Security reports all clear. Rest well. I've asked Caroline to postpone all my meetings tomorrow in case you want to talk. The gesture touched her. Alexander Montgomery postponing meetings was unprecedented, a clear signal of his priorities shifting. But was it genuine? Or merely a reaction to nearly losing everything in a single day? Eliza's mind drifted to the photograph Adamson had shown her in the park. Alexander with Edward Reeves, the brother-in-law whose information had helped build Montgomery Enterprises, the man who had taken his own life when the betrayal came to light. The foundation of Alexander's empire was tainted with tragedy, with choices that had hurt others irreparably. Yet she had never presumed Alexander was perfect. In their early years together, he had been honest about his ambition, his determination to succeed at almost any cost. It was his gradual emotional withdrawal, his increasing absence from their shared life, that had ultimately led them to the brink of divorce, not his business ethics. The wine warmed her as she considered the man she had glimpsed today, still formidable and strategic, but also vulnerable, reflective about his past mistakes, and seemingly sincere in his desire to rebuild what they had lost. Was that enough? Her contemplation was interrupted by the crunch of tires on gravel, a vehicle approaching the house. Alarm shot through her. The security team had positioned themselves discreetly at the property's perimeter, not in the main driveway. Whoever was arriving hadn't been stopped or announced. Heart racing, Eliza moved quickly inside, locking the porch door behind her. She grabbed her phone, ready to call Alexander or the security team, when headlights swept across the windows, illuminating the living room briefly before going dark. A car door closed softly. Footsteps approached the front door. Then, unexpectedly, a familiar voice called out, "Eliza? It's Sophia. Sophia Adamson. I need to speak with you. It's urgent." Sophia Adamson, the corporate spy, the woman who had recorded Alexander's conversations and used them against him. The last person Eliza expected to find at her door tonight. Cautiously, Eliza approached the window, peering through the curtains. Sophia stood alone on the porch, looking nervously over her shoulder. She wore casual clothes, jeans and a sweater, rather than the corporate attire Eliza had glimpsed during their brief encounter that morning. Most notably, she carried no purse or bag that might conceal a weapon. Against her better judgment, Eliza opened the door slightly, keeping the security chain engaged. "How did you find me? How did you get past security?" "I grew up coming to this river," Sophia explained quickly. "I know every back trail and access point. Please, I need to talk to you. It's about my father and Alexander. They're both in danger." Something in the young woman's urgent tone convinced Eliza to remove the chain, opening the door fully but remaining carefully positioned for a quick retreat if necessary. "5 minutes," she said, gesturing Sophia inside. "And I'm calling the security team to let them know you're here." After a brief call to the confused security guards, Eliza led Sophia to the kitchen, maintaining a safe distance. "Start talking." Sophia's composure from that morning was gone, replaced by visible anxiety. "My father has lost his mind," she began bluntly. "After your confrontation at Montgomery Enterprises, he went directly to Victor Zhao. They're planning something beyond corporate revenge." "What do you mean?" "I've never seen my father like this," Sophia continued, pacing nervously. "All these years, his hatred for Alexander has been cold, calculated. Today, it turned into something else, something unhinged." "Be specific," Eliza pressed. "What exactly are they planning?" Sophia stopped pacing, meeting Eliza's gaze directly. "Physical harm. To Alexander. Tonight." A chill ran through Eliza that had nothing to do with the evening air. "You expect me to believe that your father, a prominent businessman, would resort to violence after spending 20 years orchestrating corporate revenge?" I wouldn't have believed it either until I heard him on the phone with Zhao." Sophia's voice trembled slightly. "Zhao has people, professional people, who handle problems for him, people who make accidents happen. Why are you telling me this? Why betray your father after helping him all this time?" Sophia sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "Because this isn't what I signed up for. Corporate espionage, market manipulation. That's business. Ruthless, yes, but still business. This," she shook her head, "this is criminal. And whatever Alexander did to my family 20 years ago, he doesn't deserve this." Eliza studied the younger woman, trying to determine if this was yet another manipulation. "How do I know this isn't another trap? Another game?" "You don't," Sophia acknowledged, "but ask yourself this. What do I gain by coming here? If my father discovers I've warned you, I lose everything. My family, my position, my trust fund, everything." It was a compelling point. What possible advantage could Sophia gain from this warning if it wasn't genuine? "I need to call Alexander," Eliza said, reaching for her phone. "Don't," Sophia urged. "His phones are likely monitored. Zhao's people are thorough. That's how they found your apartment so quickly." "Then what do you suggest?" "Go to him," Sophia said simply. "In person. Warn him directly. Get him somewhere safe until this blows over or the authorities can be involved." Eliza hesitated, suspicions still warring with growing concern for Alexander's safety. "Why come to me? Why not warn Alexander yourself?" A bitter smile crossed Sophia's face. "After what I did to him, he'd never trust me. But you?" She gestured toward Eliza. "He trusts you. Even after everything, he still trusts you completely." The simple truth of that statement resonated with Eliza. Despite their years of growing apart, despite the divorce papers waiting to be signed, there remained a fundamental trust between them that neither time nor circumstance had entirely eroded. "If you're lying to me," Eliza said quietly, "if this is some elaborate scheme to lure me or Alexander into a trap—" "It's not," Sophia assured her, standing to leave. "I've done a lot of things I'm not proud of, following my father's vendetta. This is where I draw the line." At the door, Sophia paused. "One more thing. Alexander was telling the truth about us. There was never anything personal between us. I tried as part of my assignment, but he remained completely professional. Devoted to you, actually, even when he thought you were leaving him." With that final revelation, Sophia disappeared into the darkness, leaving Eliza with a critical decision to make. If Sophia was telling the truth, Alexander was in imminent danger. If she was lying, this could be an elaborate trap designed to capitalize on the fragile reconnection Eliza and Alexander had forged today. Eliza's instincts, the same ones that had guided her through the confrontation with Zhao, told her the threat was real. She grabbed her coat and keys, sending a quick text to the security team that she was departing, then headed for her car. As she drove toward the city, toward Alexander, Eliza realized something fundamental had shifted within her. Just that morning she had been prepared to walk away from their marriage, convinced that the emotional distance between them was unbridgeable. Now, faced with the possibility of losing Alexander in a much more permanent way, she discovered that the dormant love she had carried all these years was very much alive. Complicated by hurt and disappointment, yes, but still powerful. The city skyline came into view, Montgomery Enterprises Tower standing tallest among the illuminated buildings. Alexander would still be there, she knew. Crisis or no crisis, late nights at the office were his standard practice. Pulling into the underground parking garage, Eliza felt a sense of urgency growing within her. She bypassed the regular visitor entrance, using her long, inactive executive spouse access card at a private elevator that would take her directly to the executive floor. To her surprise, the card still worked. The elevator ascended swiftly, opening directly into the now empty reception area outside Alexander's office. Caroline was gone, but light spilled from beneath Alexander's door. Eliza moved quickly, pushing the door open without knocking. "Alexander, we need to—" She stopped short. The office was empty. Alexander's jacket hung on the back of his chair, his computer still on, a half-empty coffee cup on his desk. Signs of a hasty departure or interruption. "Alexander?" she called out, moving further into the room. No response. On his desk, Alexander's phone lay abandoned, unusual for a man who considered his phone an extension of himself. Next to it was a handwritten note in unfamiliar handwriting. "Roof, now, or she suffers." She. The implication was clear. Someone had threatened Eliza to lure Alexander to the roof. Except she wasn't in danger. She was standing right here in his office, while Alexander was potentially walking into a trap meant to exploit his concern for her. Without hesitation, Eliza grabbed the emergency stairwell access card from Alexander's desk drawer and ran. The roof was 5 floors up. She took the stairs 2 at a time, her heart pounding with exertion and fear. The heavy metal door to the roof had been propped open. Cold night air rushed in as Eliza pushed through it, scanning the expansive rooftop desperately. There, near the helipad, 3 figures. Alexander, his back to her, facing Walter Adamson, and a third man Eliza didn't recognize but whose stance and alertness screamed professional security or worse. "The mighty Alexander Montgomery," Adamson was saying, his voice carrying on the night air, "finally brought low. No company, no wife, and soon no legacy at all." "Where is she?" Alexander demanded, his voice taut with controlled fear. "If you've hurt Eliza in any way—" "I'm here!" Eliza called out, moving forward into the light. "Alexander, I'm safe!" All 3 men turned. Alexander's face registered shock, then relief, then alarm. "Eliza, stay back! They said they had you—" "Unnecessary deception," Adamson interjected smoothly, "to ensure your cooperation. Though I must say, your arrival is convenient, Eliza. 2 Montgomerys for the price of 1. The third man shifted, his hand moving inside his jacket, reaching for a weapon, Eliza realized with horror. "Walter, don't do this!" Alexander urged, moving subtly to place himself between Eliza and the threat. "Whatever happened between us, this isn't the answer." 20 years I've waited," Adamson replied, his voice eerily calm. 20 years planning how to destroy you as completely as you destroyed my family. Corporate warfare wasn't enough. You needed to lose everything as Edward did." "And Zhao?" Alexander asked. "Where does he fit into your revenge fantasy?" A thin smile crossed Adamson's face. "Mutual interests. Temporary alignment. He provided certain resources." He nodded toward the third man. In that moment, looking at Alexander's back as he stood protectively before her, Eliza realized with perfect clarity what she wanted, what she had perhaps always wanted. Not divorce, not separation, but partnership with this complex, flawed, extraordinary man who, despite his many failings, was willing to place himself between her and danger without hesitation. Before she could act on this revelation, the rooftop access door burst open again. Security guards poured through, followed by Caroline and, surprisingly, Sophia Adamson. "FBI agents are on their way up," Caroline announced, her gaze fixed on the third man, who had frozen with his hand still inside his jacket. "They have the entire building surrounded." Walter Adamson's face contorted with rage. "Sophia? You brought them here? My own daughter?" "It's over, Dad," Sophia said quietly. "No more revenge. No more destruction. Enough." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. The third man, indeed a professional problem solver on Zhao's payroll, was disarmed and detained. Walter Adamson, alternating between rage and disbelief at his daughter's betrayal, was taken into FBI custody. Sophia provided a detailed statement about her father's collaboration with Zhao and their plans to harm Alexander. When the roof finally cleared, leaving only Alexander and Eliza standing beneath the night sky, the city spread out beneath them like a sea of light. A strange calm descended. "You saved my life," Alexander said simply. "Again." "We saved each other," Eliza corrected, stepping closer to him. Alexander studied her face, hope and uncertainty battling in his expression. "About those divorce papers." Eliza placed her finger gently against his lips, silencing him. "I think," she said softly, "we should burn them." A smile bloomed across Alexander's face. Not his CEO smile or his strategic negotiator smile, but the genuine expression of joy she had fallen in love with all those years ago. "Are you sure?" he asked. "After everything you've learned about me today, my past mistakes, the enemies I've made, the danger that follows me?" "I'm sure of one thing," Eliza replied, taking his hand in hers. "Today, in the middle of crisis and revelation and danger, I discovered something I thought was lost forever. Us. The real us. Partners facing the world together, not perfect, not always right, but stronger together than apart." Alexander drew her into his arms, holding her as if she might vanish if he let go. "I don't deserve this second chance," he murmured against her hair, "but I swear I won't waste it." Eliza pulled back slightly, meeting his gaze directly. "No more separate lives. No more secrets. From now on, we face everything together. Business crises, personal regrets, dangerous enemies. All of it." "Together," Alexander agreed, sealing the promise with a kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of one chapter in their complicated story and the opening of another, yet unwritten but full of possibility. As they stood embraced against the backdrop of the city Alexander had conquered and nearly lost, Eliza reflected on the extraordinary journey of the past 12 hours. From the certainty of divorce to the renewal of partnership, from separation to reconnection, from endings to beginnings. Minutes before signing divorce papers, everything had changed. And for once, the change felt right, felt true, felt like coming home. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.